This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I would like to call to order the South Burlington City Council meeting of Monday, May 15th, 2023. And our first item of business is pledging the flag. So, Andrew, why don't you start?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I forgot to get water. Oh, well. Okay, instructions on exiting the building in case of an emergency.
Thank you. For those of you who are in the room, you can go to the left and right at the back of the auditorium and then left or right out of the building if there's an emergency. For those participating remotely, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in speaking on any item on the agenda, you can indicate your interest in the chat and I'll have the chair call on you. Or you can just turn your camera on. Otherwise, we are not monitoring the chat for content. Thank you.
Okay, good enough. Item 3, agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items? No, seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda. So Lori, why don't you? And please make sure that the light on the mic is a bright green. Oh, so then you push the little, where it says push.
There.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, my name is Laurie Smith. I am a planning commissioner, but I'm here as a citizen and a resident of Queen City Park today. Get that a little further away. There we go. I'm here to follow up on the environmental court trial of the Burton Higher Ground project applications and to request that the city attorney coordinate with Attorney Jim DeMont to ensure that the briefs filed with the court on June 5th present the strongest possible case to the court. It was great to have Colin McNeil at the trial and observe the proceedings. I hope that he provided you all with a follow-up report and that you are aware of the issues pertinent to South Burlington that were discussed at length. Of primary concern are the potential impacts on Red Rocks Park, the impacts of overflow parking on Queen City Park neighborhood, as well as Red Rocks parking lot, and the increased need for police services that will be required by the proposed venue, which will have concerts that are twice as large as the largest concerts at the current Higher Ground venue. In spite of testifying that their experts are confident there will be no disturbance to the neighbors from overflow parking or noise, Burton's representatives refused to accept any permit condition that would make those disturbances a violation of their permits. Burton's representatives and experts stated that any issues that occur off their campus, such as noise and overflow parking and traffic, will have to be the responsibility of the respective municipalities for enforcement. These incidents that will undoubtedly occur many times will have a significant financial impact on our city resources, and anything that we can do preemptively could prevent ongoing future expenses. The residents of Queen City Park are also concerned about the lack of sidewalk from the end of Central Avenue to where the sidewalk begins on the east side of the one-lane bridge, where walking can be, at best, quite hazardous sometimes. I understand that Colin's role in the trial was that of an observer. However, having him reinforce the concerns and the needs for conditions to protect the surrounding neighborhoods prior to any final approval of the project would be very helpful and would support Jim's arguments. I, along with the over 125 financial contributors to this effort, request that the City Council direct Colin to coordinate with Jim and submit a brief to the courts or follow any other recommendation that Jim has to support his efforts. And I also am open to answering any questions that you guys may have about the trial or about status and where we are and how it's moving forward.
Okay, whoa, this is loud enough.
It is really loud.
I'll whisper. We haven't had an update that I recall, because the trial was the 5th, and we met before that.
Well, the trial was 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
it was
we haven't had a,
We have not had an update.
no, we haven't had an update.
June 5th.
He had vacation directly after the trial.
Oh,
so-
okay, so he wasn't here to even give us an update.
June 5th is the date that the briefs are due to the court. So I don't know how that fits with your schedule in terms of being able to vote on authorizing anything. But
Okay, just to be clear, so when you wrote me the letter, I guess I read it too quickly. And I thought what you were asking is that Colin meet with your lawyer to discuss what was said and provide some advice, but not necessarily submit a brief from the city. But that's not what you're asking.
what we would like would be for the city's attorney to coordinate with Jim Dumont and provide either support and or briefs in support of the concerns that are specifically important to South Burlington. So that as the judge is reviewing all the material, she has the strongest case in front of her for protecting Red Rocks and the parking. As they said, you know, if people are parking on the public streets, that's the municipality's responsibility. But we don't have a resident-only parking ordinance in the city of South Burlington, so we can't do resident parking only. We don't have good enforcement. They've had over 100 incidents a year, 130 incidents a year at the current higher ground, the facility which is significantly smaller than the new facility. And it's going to be right on the South Burlington border, as far away from the police department as you can get. These are going to be significant impacts long term for the city. So anything we can do to get support from the city to help protect not only Queen City Park, but our finances would be awesome.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I would like to have us discuss this under other business, given the June 5th date. And I would like to know, and we can do that under other business unless you are so inclined, Jesse, to let us know when Colin McNeil will be returned or if he's already here and when he would be available to give us an update.
So I would suggest you not talk about this under other business, but do it in executive session. Given that we're pretty early in the meeting, if you want to add that to the executive session we have tonight, we're not necessarily prepared to exactly talk about this, but you could do that and schedule a special session.
I didn't even realize we had 19 possible executive session.
At midnight? No.
No, it will be 10ish. Maybe sooner, but yes. All right, well, we can add that to the agenda if everyone is,
I would recommend somebody make a motion and
Okay.
approve them.
I'll move that we add attorney-client privileges added to our executive session agenda, where we will be discussing the Burton matter.
Second.
is there any further comment? All right, all in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Okay, so we'll add that to the agenda. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I don't. I want to hear what Colin has to say.
Great. And thank you guys for all your support and all the work you do.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments? Roseanne?
I'm Roseanne Greco, resident of South Burlington. I agree with Laurie. I'm not up here to speak about that, but I totally agree that could be a disaster. We already know what happened when we bring noisy things into communities and what happens. So, but I'm here to talk to you about the ash trees. It's been about 2 years now that I first brought this up to y'all, and I'm here to request that the city consider treating the ash trees that we have. If you have not yet made a decision to do so, at a minimum, will buy time for you to determine what you actually do want to do with the ash trees. I spoke to a tree expert today on this, and apparently the emerald ash borer is in South Burlington. They found it over in some of the trees in the parking lot at Dynapower. If you remember, they found it on ash trees in the parking lot of Best Buy in Williston last year. The borer goes to stressed trees, trees that are not super healthy. So most of the, at least in my neighborhood and other places where there are ash trees in neighborhoods, those trees are healthy. They're not in the middle of a concrete jungle. So we could save those, but we're running out of time. Generally, you treat the trees in the springtime. And so this is a time I've been getting calls from tree places that wanting to know if I want to treat my ash trees. We already treated them last year. So one of the guys I talked to today says it's about $10 an inch. And there's discounts for many trees. So I'm really requesting that the city take
That's
action.
the diameter, right?
Diameter. Oh, yeah,
I was gonna
diameter.
say,
Right, no,
pricey.
diameter, right?
Okay, just to
Right,
clarify
diameter,
that.
right. And it's, anyway, if you treat them now, if the borer is not there, or if it's just coming in, then there's the opportunity to stop it. The treatment is like 99% effective. It's been, trees in Michigan have been treated for 15, 16 years. They're still healthy and alive. Remember Don Stevens, Chief Stevens was here speaking to the council a while back. He pleaded with us to save it. It builds up the resistance. Some of the trees can build up a resistance, and but if they all die, then obviously, they can't. So I'm asking that you take action pretty quickly, and if only to treat the healthy ones in neighborhoods right away. It's a small amount of money, I think, to go a long way, because we definitely need our trees. One of the guys did a heat test in trees, shaded areas. The temperature is up to 30 degrees cooler. And as we lose our trees, we're going to create more heat islands. So let's please save the trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add that was an ARPA request from the
Right, I know, I
right
read about it and considered it.
Natural
Yeah.
Resources and
So
Conservation
the Natural
Committee.
Resources and Energy, no, just Natural Resources Committee did request money for the trees in their ARPA requests. So we haven't made a definite determination on that yet. Okay. Are there any other commenters in the audience at home or here?
Is that John coming down?
No, I think he's just getting here. Okay. All right. Well, then we will move on to counselors' announcements and reports on committee assignments, and then the city manager's report. Andrew, do you have anything to report?
Not this week.
Okay. Tim?
I have just a couple things. I came here for the Economic Development Committee meeting last week, and it was canceled. And I didn't know until I got here with a big piece of paper there that said canceled, but I think it's been rescheduled for tomorrow. I also attended, I was the only South Burlington City Councilor to attend the Northwest Vermont Realtors Association meeting at Pizza 44 last Thursday. There were a couple of Winooski City Council reps there, and it was a small group, but Peter Tucker gave a very long presentation about the status of legislation at the close of the session, because that was last week. And I met several people, and we had interesting discussions about development, so it was good. It was good. I also attended the Charter Committee feedback session on Thursday and heard some really interesting points made about the proposal to perhaps go to a ward/district/ whatever, mayor type governance model. I ran in the Vermont Corporate Cup 5K in Montpelier on Thursday with a team from Global Foundries. I think it's like the 8th one I've done. We hadn't done it in 4 years, or 3 years at least, because of the pandemic. And that was a blast. I think the crowd was about 3,000 rather than 4,000. As it has been in the past, because I think just some people have washed out because of the pandemic. But it was still great fun, and I won't tell you how slow I ran it, but I did finish it, and I didn't stop. And that's important.
It is.
It
Good
is
for
important.
you.
And I also wanted to say that we have a tradition in our household for Mother's Day where we take all the bikes to the Causeway in Colchester, and we do a bike and a run, and then we have bagels at the end when we're in the park. And I just had an observation just sitting there waiting for them to come back on their bikes about the number of people using Airport Park in Colchester, and what a great facility it is, and how well maintained it seems to be, and how much fun everybody was having, either on the swings or just tons of people coming on their bikes from the Burlington bike path transferring over to the Causeway path headed out towards the cut. It was just how important parks are. I just can't overstate that. And the last thing I wanted to say is, folks, if you have a car and you park it outside at night and it's not in a garage, please lock your car. Front Porch Forum is loaded with instances of people's unlocked cars being ransacked and gone through at night, and things being taken, whether it's your, a sack of quarters for the tolls going down to Boston, or it's like more expensive equipment that are left in the car. Please don't leave your car unlocked anywhere, ever. Just take a bit of advice. I've had my car ransacked in the past, and I lock it up even in my own driveway. Even every time I get out of my car, I lock my car. So please, I'm just trying to get that message across. If you can hear me or you watch a recording in the future, everybody, lock your car. That's all I have.
Good advice. Thank you. Megan?
I used to run, but I no longer. So that's not the kind of marathon that I've been doing over the past week. I've been grading. I'm a marathon grader. So if I have dark circles under my eyes, it's because of that. And also because I traveled to Rochester, New York and back from my son's graduation. So it was a weekend of celebrations. Yeah. It was a big deal. Lots of South Burlington kids out there at Rochester Institute of Technology. So his roommate in his apartment who moved in January or March, I can't remember, they took a class together. They weren't in the same class, but they took, the same year, but they took a class together.
Oh, cool.
And so it's a really small world. So anyway, that's my marathon
And he
story.
did very well, so congratulations.
He did do very well, magna cum laude.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, he did very well.
So.
And he got a BS and an MS, and he's off to Irvine, California. So I won't run there either. Just about 4 things. I really regret that I wasn't able to attend the SBBA meeting at the airport. I really wanted to go, but because of my marathon, I've gotten just really consumed with work. I do want to just note that I'm curious if Moreau Weinberger did have any outreach to us regarding the name of the airport. No. And I respect Senator Leahy. I do not respect one of his decisions, which was to reimpose on our neighborhood as well as Winooski and Williston, among other neighborhoods and communities, the F-35. And so it's a little bit of a slap in the face for the people who live in that neighborhood. But I think he's done wonderful things. I just was curious if our neighbor had reached out to us. Second thing, our dear friend Vince Bolduc and his family have sustained an incredibly traumatic loss. It's been in the paper, so I'm not breaking any news, but his 44-year-old daughter, Christy, passed away a week ago Sunday, leaving behind a 10 and a 12-year-old. And the 12-year-old is in my daughter's class. And I just want to say, with regard to the power of love, that when I was in touch with Vince last Tuesday night into Wednesday morning a week ago, inquiring into Christy's well-being, and knowing that the play that my daughter and his grandson were playing in, the musical last weekend, a week ago, he said that she might not make it to opening night. That play was Friday, Saturday matinee, and Saturday night, and she held on till Sunday morning. And that's just the power of a mother's love. And I just, in honor of mothers and peace, that Mother's Day was originally created to celebrate. She did everything she could, I think, to bring peace to that little boy's, and I shouldn't say little boy, but he is life over that very celebratory weekend of him being the star of the musical. So my heart goes out to the Bulldogs, including Andrew, who has played an incredibly important role for the city. Third thing I have, just thinking, and I know it's been brought up before, but I just want to say I'm adding my voice to this recommendation. When I attended online the Charter Committee's community forum and heard Elizabeth Fitzgerald talk about the traffic here, is there any way for us to create a one-way, at least during certain hours, and have buses come in but go out, as well as parent cars go out onto Williston Road, just to simplify the flow of that traffic? And I know that there was some resistance when that idea came up, but I just wanted my voice, and if that little bit of impetus could make that thinking happen again, I would support that. And finally, the Charter Community Forum last Wednesday. These days are so long. I thought it was wonderful. I want to congratulate the members of the committee. They are really doing a tremendous service because they bring so much knowledge, not only about how elections work, how government works here at the municipal and at the state level. And we have one of the members here in the audience, and Donna, and just the neutrality of it all, and really the tenor of that whole meeting, where there was, I thought, a really open discussion with widely varying opinions being discussed. I just think that's the way it should be. And I was sitting there, and I just wanted to applaud everybody. So thank you, Donna. Thank you to your committee members. And Donna is certainly not just slinking off. She is full bore through to her glorious days here that we will be celebrating as she not rides off into the sunset, but hopefully has more time with her granddaughter and perhaps other grandchildren that I don't know about. So, thank you.
Colin?
Well, Megan, thank you for providing that context around the Bulldogs. I think it was very kind, very thoughtful, very timely, and along with you, my heart goes out to that family and to the community. It's a terrible, tragic loss. From a committee assignment standpoint, I was inspired by the dialogue that took place last week around the issue of the fields at JC Park. And A is being part of that committee, and B also because I know a number of the constituents who ultimately jumped in the email chain. I just wanted to get a little deeper understanding of what the core issues were, and perhaps how we could we as a community could be more proactive in those areas. And so I started the process of trying to learn more. Admittedly, much of the input that I received was there's some inherent bias in it, and in the sense that it's mostly from constituents who use the field for baseball and softball, and that's not a reflection of not wanting to draw from a larger sample size, but from a civic engagement standpoint, those sports are fairly remarkable in how engaged they are, and how, I think, just culturally ingrained, taking care in those sports. It seems as in baseball and softball in particular, it seems like that's just part of how they operate. I didn't play baseball all that much as a kid, so I can't speak to it one way or another, but they just have the highest levels of civic engagement. And the discussions were collaborative. It was not, by no means was it was it caustic? They're grateful for everything that the city does. But they did bring up some points which I thought were salient, and it reminded me a lot of what Councilor Barrett mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, when we were talking about ARPA funds. About, well, we have a list of great proposals. Let's start diving into them and stack ranking them, and let's take some action on them. I thought that point came to my mind numerous times in those conversations. So at some point, I'd like to revisit that. And another one that I think was not, albeit I think although how it was expressed, I think was a bit gruff. Although I understand the frustration, I think the point that another member of the community made during the last meeting about if we can't take care, and again, I apologize, I'm not doing anyone a service with exactly how I'm going to articulate it. So just caveat, but if we can't take care of what we have right now, we should be mindful of that as we go about trying to do new things. Those two sentiments came to mind again and again and again in these conversations. There's a clear and urgent need for us to, we suspect, and again, I don't know, but that a lot of it is funding based, but there's a clear and urgent need to accelerate many of the capital works projects or maintenance that otherwise has been deferred on some of our parks and rec fields. And I'm excited to revisit that issue at some point in the future. And also, there have been some really great plans and proposals that have been put forth by very thoughtful members of the community and that are included in those ARPA proposals. And I'm looking forward to implementing those as potential solves.
Great, thank you.
Helen, may I
Yes.
gather my thoughts?
Oh, you have something else to add? Sure.
Yeah, just a few things, yeah. So I did attend the NG committee meeting. They're planning on having a climate change event in late September,
Oh, nice.
early October, here in City Hall. Vendors, food. They want to possibly close up Market Street and have vendors along the street. So it should be a good event and a big event. I met with the director of curriculum for our schools, Lisha Backman, along with a gentleman who runs a website subject to climate, to talk about how we can get more climate education in the school system. And we're going to be setting up some subsequent meetings with the science teachers and the principals and see if we could figure that out. So I'm excited about that. I did attend Green Up Day. I was excited to see lots of folks out there, and there was a lot of trash collected, and it's a wonderful community event. I was dismayed though, riding my bicycle a few days later to see some of the sections that I
It's all back.
cleaned up with.
Somebody buys those like 12 packs of
It's
some
really
kind of like,
something.
carbonated liquor soda, and the boxes are just thrown on Dorset Street every quarter mile.
It is really something.
It's the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I don't know what we can do about that. And just one thing I want to note, I guess we all received an invitation to a groundbreaking for Hillside East. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I'll be out of town, but I was really, really excited by that announcement. 155 carbon-free homes, all electric, all with solar, all with battery backup. It just seems like a real
Yes.
model for this community, for the state, for the nation. So I think the O'Brien brothers deserve a lot of credit for that, for putting that together. And I'd love to learn more about exactly how they're doing it. And so I think that's very exciting.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to go and represent the city. So, but I read that and was very impressed. I actually didn't know it was in the planning. So it's very cool. Just a comment, Tyler. I think your reflections are illustrate how all the decisions we make are so nuanced and integrated. It's never really an easy yes, of course, some things are, or no, not ever. but it's that, and that's what I think makes serving on the city council interesting, because you get all the perspectives, and then you have to rumble through it and figure out what's really the best decision potentially for the most people. And it's challenging, but I'm sort of glad you see that. I didn't do much, except I did go to a book group meeting that was offered by the Affordable Housing Committee, and I'm reading the book that they were talking about called Fixer Upper. It's available at the library, and it's pretty good reading. I mean, it has a lot of different ideas. I think much of it is focused more on urban areas than South Burlington or Vermont even, but you can always learn something. So it's worth a read. And I was out in Salt Lake visiting my grandkids and my daughters, and I would add, I think a couple years ago, I shared with the council and with you a concept, Jesse, of a guy who happens to actually live around the corner, but he's made a ton of money doing something. He's a real philanthropist and really creates businesses to help people who are either formerly incarcerated, and now he's really on this effort on the homeless and has bought a large tract of land and is planning a community that has single homes and all sorts of amenities for those residents, because Salt Lake has an enormous homeless problem. And I just thought they apparently had just gotten the okay from the city council to go forward on this. Remember I shared that with you and you went, whoa, that's a big one. and it was enormous. So I'll keep you posted and see what information I can get, because there might be, again, some tidbits for South Burlington about how you can address homeless issues. Okay, city manager.
Great, thanks. So just to thoroughly embarrass them, it's Barb Service's birthday. Happy birthday, Barb. And Sue Alnick's birthday eve. Happy birthday. Woohoo.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sue and Barb. Happy birthday to you and many more.
That's right. Both of you.
So thank you. Happy birthday, Sue. We did have to cancel the Economic Development Committee meeting last week for lack of a quorum, which is a reminder that we are seeking applications for committee members. We have 36 positions that are coming up for reappointment. So if you are interested, the deadline for applications for commissions is this Thursday the 18th, and we will start interviewing in your subcommittees next week. I do want to confirm with the council that June 26th from 4 to 8 is our FY24 Policies and Strategies Retreat. Hopefully here, I haven't talked to Holly yet about space, but
The
figure it out.
26th, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's the last Monday of the month, so not a council meeting Monday. Want to provide a few quick public works construction updates. So work to reconstruction and improve the Kenny Drive stormwater pond 2, second stormwater pond near the West Twin Oaks Terrace will be starting this week. There will be a period in that time where the access is closed off. We will fully communicate that, but just a heads up that that is coming. Also, the work on the Linwood Stormwater project is wrapping up in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that full Linwood Road will be paved as part of that project, so residents will see that. Recreation continues to add a lot of programming for the summer, so stay tuned to the website for updated programming. There is still time to sign up for summer camps, and there are scholarships available. Thank you for mentioning the charter forum. We have our second charter forum next Thursday evening, the 25th.
It's a Wednesday, I think.
Wednesday evening, the 25th.
Is it a Thursday?
Yeah, that's the only one I
Thursday
can
evening, the
do.
25th, from 7 to 9 here. Actually, it's going to be upstairs in 301.
Yes. All right. That's just my brain. It's my brain. Having a meltdown.
Okay.
And
7
then
to 9. Okay.
just a reminder to the council that before your next meeting, which is June 5th, there will be an art reception in the lobby for the change out of the art exhibits, and it will be the high school students' art. So we're really excited to welcome their art to City Hall.
Oh, nice.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6, and we're not too far behind here. The consent agenda. There's 1, 2, 3, 11 items. Disbursements, the purchase of a fire engine and ambulance, the TIF appraisers, the applying for a lead service.
Lead service.
Pardon me?
Lead. Lead.
Yeah.
Like,
Did I say lead? Oh, I meant lead. Excuse me. Lead
I thought it was lead
service
when I first read
line
through it.
inventory. Award of the FY24 annual paving program to Pike Industries. A contract for replacement of the main line gate valves on Shelburne Road. Got a lot of road stuff. Or water. Approve a grant application for a V-Trans Municipal Roads Grants and Aid Program. Received the 24th April financials for FY24. Approve a Natural Resources and Conservation Committee request to provide a letter of support for the Vermont Invasive Species Management Day. Approve submittal of the, should be Northern, right? Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Program Grant. For the water storage tank that y'all read about in the other paper. And an addendum to a maintenance agreement for the public art project located in front of Healthy Living.
So I'll move to approve, but I just have a question about the lead
Okay,
service line.
let's get a second and then we'll discuss.
Second.
Okay,
But I wanted some discussion about
on the lead?
No, on a different item.
Oh, okay. So your question on lead.
How often is this done? Is this a new initiative? Is it because we have reason to believe that we have lead in our water? There are all kinds of questions.
Tom,
Thank you, Tom.
this is
I
why
read
Tom
it
is
as a
here.
federal program. I'm guessing it's from Flint
It's good that he's here.
as a result of Flint, but
There's a lot of money on this.
It took them a long time to get attention.
He's a million.
Good evening, councilors. This is a new requirement, so it has nothing to do with South Burlington specifically. It's a federal requirement that's sort of passed down to the states, passed down to us. So we have to investigate, document what the lines are made of, make sure they're not lead. If we do find lead lines, we have to make a plan to replace them. We don't believe there's a high likelihood in our community, but we're required to do it.
Is this the first time we're testing for lead?
This is a new program, new requirement. Jay would have to tell us when we stopped using lead service lines, but our requirements to not use lead have been
are we testing the
years.
water or just determining where the lead lines are that we need to replace, regardless of
we're
whether
just reviewing documentation about the lines and what they're made of right now.
Okay.
And then in the next phase, if we're required, if we don't know what a line's made of, we may have to dig it up and look
replace them?
as part of the rules.
The inventory program itself is, right now, we just go into homes, businesses, whatever, and see what the line material is coming in. That's the inventory. That's all there is to it.
So you don't
Now,
test the water.
The second phase will be to determine what the line material is between the main and the curb stop. That's after October 16th of 24. This was an EPA mandated program that began talking about it began in 2019. Came law last year.
But the ultimate decision, I guess, or consequence would be that lead lines would be dug up, taken out, and replaced with whatever you're replacing with.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
First, we want to identify them. There'll be more federal money coming down the line for when we do identify a lead line, its removal.
Okay. And I'm assuming it's from a lot of clamor from Flint that they're finally, Congress is finally doing something.
That's where it got its start.
May I ask a question?
Took a while.
Yes, you may, I'm sorry.
Does the Champlain Water District today deploy chemistry to counteract the effects of possible lead lines leading to homes?
Yes.
They do.
I can't tell you what year it happened. 1980s, early 90s, maybe. Champlain Water began introducing zinc orthophosphate, which is kind of a liner. And it reduces the risk of lead leaching.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what happened in Flint was they changed the source of the water, and that negated that, and then it dissolved all that, lining, and then the water was just anyway. That's a long
A
story.
mess, okay. All right, you have another question?
Yes.
Does
So
that satisfy?
with regards to the Pike paving contract, may I read the names of the streets that will be repaved so that the audience and will see if their street is on that list?
You certainly may.
Thank you. So, Black Lantern Lane, Cottage Grove, Eastwood Drive, Hayes Avenue, Nolan Farm Road, Pinnacle Drive East portion, Proctor Avenue from Meadow Road to Rice High School, Spear Street from Pinnacle to Swift Street, Twin Oaks, Butler Drive from Marcy Street to Whiteface, Cedar Glen, all the way around Spear Street to the cul-de-sac, Kensington Terrace, Woodside Drive. And also, Cheese Factory lanes will be reclaimed, regraded, and have a base course on top course of asphalt installed. What does that mean?
We're going to grind up the road, compact it into a base course, and then pave over it.
So they're going to grind it completely down.
Yes.
All right, not just grind off the top inch and a half. They're going to
correct,
rebuild the road basically to some degree. Okay.
Yep, we did this with White Street many years ago, you may recall.
Okay.
Does that make it flatter so it doesn't have that bump in the middle, or do you want the bump?
You want the bump, the crown?
Oh, so
That
the
helps
water
water.
flows? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
off to the side, yeah.
I thought you meant the bump that goes up the hill. That goes
Oh, no. We're going to tunnel our way to Heinsberg Road.
Cheese Factory.
Okay, are we ready for the vote?
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And I'll just say we didn't want to get ahead of the council by publishing that list before you actually approve the contract, but we
Yes.
will be sure it is available to the public
There you go.
in an easily accessible fashion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7, approve an offer of appointment and introduce the city's new city clerk. And Daisy Brayton, our Human Resources Director. I don't think the light is bright.
It is not
It
bright. It is
now
bright
it's
now.
bright.
Thank you, everybody. Daisy Brayton. I'm the HR director for the City of South Burlington. It was my pleasure to help you with the recruiting and the interviewing and the final job offering to the top candidate that you had chosen. We had an excellent pool of candidates that had applied for the city clerk position, and it is my honor to say that Holly Reese has agreed to accept our offer and our position, and will. Helen has a letter of offer to sign to officially give that position, and we will. The offer is for beginning the position on May 30th. She'll transition into the incoming city clerk position by working 20 hours a week in her current role as the recreation and parks director, and then also as the city clerk. Donna has very graciously agreed to assist with training and has set a tentative or a kind of firm date of August 18th as to when her transition out will be. Jesse has reminded me in this meeting we will need a motion to appoint her into the position. And any other questions you have for me about the offer? We're very excited to bring her on board.
So as the city clerk is an elected position here in the city, and this is a mid-election vacancy, the council has the sole authority to appoint a city clerk just until the term of the town meeting day 2024 election. So you need to officially take that action for this to be final.
Right, and I just might add that appointment carries with it all of the responsibilities and duties of a duly elected city clerk. So it's not a step down.
And that would
But
be
it's
through March 5th of
Through March
2024.
5th, yeah. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve this offer.
Second.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We got
It was
everyone going.
simultaneous.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor?
Hi.
Oh,
We were slow. We
Heartily
should have
aye.
all voted at the same time.
right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lori.
Got excited.
We are so pleased, Holly. Thank you. All right. Now, one of the duties that you'll soon have is next. So Donna wanted to show you what you have to do sometimes. And this is, we'll receive the warrant of unlicensed dogs and cats and provide direction. I might add, I think the first year I was on the council, I missed the deadline. And so before it became public, Donna very nicely called me and said, you might want to not have your name on this, of which I've always been appreciative. So,
So take a hint.
but it's too late now because they're all published.
They're here.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. So it's that time of year again. The clerk's office works hard every year to make sure that all the dogs are licensed. We advertise 4 times in the other paper. I send out an email to everybody who gives us their email. I think I did 4 times this year, January, February, and March, and then the last week in March. I'm like, please, 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 please. We don't want to collect your late fees. Please come in. As well as front porch forum postings. So we do get a lot of advertisement out there. And so actually we are, I say this every year, but we've actually have the most registered that we've ever had at this point in time. It's like each year we keep going up and up. And so yeah, so we're doing really well. As people recall, Winston was our cat, who was our first feline, and Sunny is our top dog. And they both love the packages they got as their prizes. So what I'm presenting to you tonight is a list of those dogs and cats which have not registered since last year. We have gone through recent sales and a few other things to try and get this list down. And as it stands right now, we have about 203 dogs and 47 cats currently unregistered, which is down from last year, but the clerk's office is has reached our limitations on what we can do. We're not an enforcement agency, we're a registration agency. And so we have gone through and done everything we can to try and encourage people to register. And then state law says that I turn over the list to the legislative body, and it's up to them to decide what they wish to do with this list. They can ignore it. They can request that we send out more requests, and up to, and I hate to say this, but you do have that right to go and to take a dog or cat from a residence and even destroy it if so you so wish.
Ew.
Yeah. I'm not recommending that, but that is the law. That is, those are the extremes that you guys have in your decision.
Okay.
So-
In the past, have we ever published the names? We haven't, have we? In the
Well-
other paper? I don't recall.
I do an opposite one because people get mad because we're not the enforcement agency. And they say, well, I register mine and my next door neighbor doesn't. So what we've done is we put out on the list, on our website, a list of all the dogs and cats that are registered. Very limited information. We're trying not to make it so people can search. It'll say, at 180 Market Street, there's a Fido and he's a dog. I mean, that's the limit of what we'll put out there. And so what we created was the ability for people to anonymously report an unlicensed dog or cat. So there is a form on our website that they can click on it and they can say, I know there's a cat and it's at this address. It comes to me anonymously. I have no idea who the email comes from. And I then send a letter out to that home, and just a very nice letter just saying you may just be new to the city, not sure of the state laws, et cetera, but it is state law that you must register your dog or your cat. Please come into the office and remedy this as soon as possible. And if this is received by mistake, please just let us know so we won't bother you. And then if they don't respond to that within 2 weeks, I send it to the animal control officer to
Okay. But the
follow up.
list you have tends to be, they were registered last year and just
Mhm.
forgot this year.
Or
So
they may have
maybe
moved and
the
just not
dog is
contacted
dead, or
us, or
cat is no longer alive, or
right.
they've moved. Okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with a lot of the rentals that we have in the city here, I don't have sales for them. I don't know if someone turned over because they rented a house and
Sure,
they moved.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have that detail.
Okay.
So some of them may be that.
All
Although
right.
we have gone through and sent out letters and whatever's come back to us, we have removed those people.
Okay. What's your pleasure?
What's the total number of registered dogs and cats? Just getting a sense. What's the total number that are registered?
Total number that are registered right now, 1,660.
1,600. Okay, so about 15% or so.
And
Yep.
Donna, so if I'm understanding you correctly, that the figure that we have for unregistered, that comes from two sources, either A, anonymous reporting, or B, non-renewals from the prior year.
No, this is strictly people that have not registered from last year.
Oh, it's just from that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, because if I send a note out to someone and they register them, then we're fine. And if I don't hear from them, then it's up to the animal control officer, and they would just come in and register if they were there. So in the past, what we have done, and whether you wish to do so or not, again, is we do send out a letter with the envelope from the police department, and a letter that's approved by the police chief, just stating that, very nicely again, that your dog or cat was registered last year, is not this year, please come in and register. And I did a really quick review, and it's kind of hard to tell because the program is very limited. But after that letter went out last year, we did about in the 60s to 70 of people that came in after getting that police letter to register their pet.
Sounds
So,
good.
I mean,
So what do you
that's-
want to
We've
do?
never-
Want to send out another reminder?
That's what's worked in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
As
hard
part
to
of
do
the police
anything
letter?
else. I mean, do we have an ability to fine people?
Well, they have to pay a late fee.
They
Right?
pay.
Yeah.
They pay.
For instance, a cat, a dog that's spayed or neutered, registered on time is $25.
Yeah.
And then we give them a month of April and say, okay, you may have just kind of forgotten, and people think April 15th, everything happens on April 15th. So the late fees are not as drastic, so it goes up to maybe like 34, 35. Once you hit May 1st, it goes up to 58. So a dog that usually costs $25 is now $58. And
Problem
the
is, I
idea
guess-
of doing that was to get people to register on time to make it.
Yeah.
The problem is you don't know that everyone on this list owes that, right? I mean, otherwise you can just send a bill for the late fee, but you just don't know, right?
Right. Yeah. Or the dog may have died.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that what you would like? So
Yeah.
we would like to direct the city clerk to send out one more reminder through the auspice of the police department
Yeah.
with their letterhead, and I guess Chief Burke signs it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll coordinate with him to make sure he's okay
Right.
with the letter.
To let them know we mean business. Yeah. Okay.
You did a great job, Donna, in getting the
But
word
thank you.
out.
Yeah. No, it is good.
Various forms.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you. Item 9 is another fun thing tonight, and would you like to read? We have a resolution honoring Leslie Black-Plumeau for years and years and years of service, particularly on the Affordable Housing Committee. So,
All right, and I get the honor as liaison to the committee on which you've served so well and for so long to read the resolution. So this is the City Council resolution honoring Leslie Black-Plumeau for her years of service volunteering. Whereas Leslie Black-Plumeau, member on the Affordable Housing Committee, resigned on April 19th, 2023, after 10 years of outstanding and praiseworthy service to the City of South Burlington. And whereas Leslie began her service with the Affordable Housing Committee in 2012, bringing her housing affordability experience from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, where she is the Community Relations and Research Manager in the Policy and Planning Department at Vermont Housing Finance Agency. And whereas Leslie has consistently responded with resourcefulness and foresight to the duties and responsibilities given her, fulfilling them with outstanding competency. And whereas Leslie was instrumental in the development and implementation of impactful projects, such as development of the Path to Affordability Affordable Housing Report adopted by the City Council in 2013. This report helped lead the way to several municipal policies households still benefit from today, such as the establishment of a housing trust fund, inclusionary zoning, diversification of building types, diversification of planned development, form-based codes, access to outdoor space, encouragement of municipal water and sewer, and many more. And whereas Leslie's insight and strong advocacy helped lay the groundwork for a decade's worth of policies and funding that directly helped numerous singles, families, students, and elders to be able to have safe, accessible, and affordable housing in this great community. And whereas Leslie has set an example of dedication to principle, which has been an inspiration to her fellow committee members, and there are many of them here with you. This is an incredible committee. It's really very close. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the City Council, do hereby extend to Leslie Black-Plumeau our sincere and grateful appreciation for her dedicated service to the City of South Burlington, our congratulations on her continued work for creating an affordable state of Vermont, and our best wishes to her and her family for continued success, happiness, and good health in the years to come.
Well, thank you.
Does she come up? Or we
Yes,
have
we
to
should have-
sign?
yeah, we
Or
have
just
to
get a
sign it,
Do we
picture?
need to
though.
approve this resolution first?
Oh, we have to approve it. That's true.
Yes.
It
Are we willing
seems
to do
like
that?
we all approved it. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
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 So, pardon?
We will, I mean, you all do need to sign it, but we will also put it in a frame and deliver
Oh,
it to
okay, well
Leslie,
then
so
maybe
she
we
doesn't
don't
need to-
do it now. Would you like to come up and receive it, please?
At least our thanks.
Yeah.
We fixed some typos.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's been super fun.
So I'm gonna give it back to you?
Yeah.
And then you're gonna give it back to me? Yeah. Thanks, Megan. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on to 10. We're 2 minutes early, but I think we could start the warning for a public hearing on land development regulations amendments of LDR 22-09, which are updates to Article 12, the environmental standards. So, Paul.
Hey folks, Paul Connor here, Director of Planning and Zoning. Michael Matag from the Planning Commission is also in the audience here, so thank you, Michael, for attending, as is Donna Leben online from the Planning Commission. So this is the set of amendments that on April 17th you gave the okay to warn the second public hearing on after you'd received some feedback in March. This is, again, some relatively minor adjustments to the environmental protection standards. Happy to go through them, but I know that the council has seen them a couple of times at this point, so I'll invite you, if you'd like, to open the public hearing. We did not receive any additional feedback at the staff level during the last few weeks.
Are there any questions or any elaboration that anyone needs? We have gone over this a couple of times. Okay, well then I would entertain a motion to open a public hearing on LDR 22-09.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So is there, I guess we turn it over to the public. there anyone who would like to comment on these changes? Seeing none in the audience and seeing no hands raised, I guess I could conclude that you did an excellent job and listened to people and crafted language that they are happy about. So that's great. So if there's no comments, I guess we can close the public hearing.
Do you want a motion?
Yes, please.
So I move to close the public hearing on amendment to the Land Development Regulations LDR 22-09.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And then we have the option to approve them, correct?
Yes,
that's
there's a
the
motion in your
next-
packet.
There is a motion. Would you like
Yeah.
the motion?
Yes,
So I would also like to move to adopt amendment to the Land Development Regulations LDR 22-09 as presented tonight.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Great, thank you, Paul.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry that took so long.
Don't worry, I'll be back at your next meeting with some more.
Yeah, just sit there. You're up next. Item 11 is the possible action on land development regulations amendment.
We just did that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Item 12, receive an updated rental ordinance and implementation plan and provide direction to staff. And Stephen Locke is going to take us through that.
Good evening. So we did the project team did update the ordinance, the draft ordinance, and it's in your packet to address the questions and concerns that you had last time. And so Colin has taken care of doing those. And so I think the next phase in that, if we have addressed the questions in the ordinance that you wanted to have all considered, is the conversation about the income, the potential revenue and expenses that would go along with this ordinance. So, without the staff to put into enforcement, they're really they really have to. Those two things have to go together. Both having the ordinance and having the staffing availability to enforce the ordinance. So, if you'll remember that we currently do not inspect rental properties unless there is a complaint. We certainly have the authority to. It's just that we do not have the capacity. And so typically we only do complaint-based inspections of rental properties. And so this proposal, by creating the rental registry fee and depending on which model you go with, so the current draft ordinance sets a fee of $100 and then a discount for our large buildings, but that does not generate enough revenue annually to cover the entire expense of the program. And so in your packet of the memo, there are some options that you could either do away with the discount or raise the fee $25 or so to get to a point where you would build in enough capacity. So did provide you some options. The staffing capacity that we believe would take 2 inspectors, and we need the administrative support. So that's working with HR and finance to come up with what those positions with benefits would cost, and then there is some one-time cost to upfit, and then as well as that reoccurring cost. So that kind of sets the table. I think the kind of 2 action points that the team needs from you at this point is a direction of does the ordinance as we've crafted it with the exception of fees meet your expectation? And then secondly, are you where are you thinking your thoughts on the fee structure? And then if those things with appropriate direction, then I think the next step would be moving towards a public hearing. So with that, I'll summarize it and go to your questions.
Questions or comments or thoughts? Go ahead, Tim.
$1 million? Can you explain that? And where would this $1 million office space be?
I just want to make sure that you understand. I mean, for me, $1 million. Unfortunately, renovations are extremely expensive, and there's no space or very limited space, existing space, built out space. And so what we would have to do is do some form of renovation at 575 Dorset Street that would allow us to have a space where the public could come into for to both meet with staff and file permitting. That office currently, our fire prevention office, gets a lot of foot traffic every day. And we believe we could offset some the opening in the back of the building, move the prevention division down to really I don't know what it used to be. It's some currently now used for some storage, but it would require some work in order to upfit that for appropriate office space. It currently does not have that capacity, capability, or capacity.
So does it mean you have to build an addition?
No, it's it's completely renovation.
Complete renovation.
And I'll say this: this is our best estimate. This is not even our best estimate. This is a back and a napkin estimate. I want you to know that we would have to go out for a design build and do some meeting on renovation and get some budgetary numbers for you. But I want you to think that this will be an expensive rehab. This won't be $100,000 refurb to make this office space.
Is there any space that we gave literally to the school department that they're not using, that maybe we could rent from them for this? I don't know. I haven't been in since it's the school department, so I don't know how they're using all the space. It certainly was a lot larger than what they had before.
So certainly on the first floor is pretty well occupied, and my conversations with the city attorney was that they were looking for all the space and were happy with the space. I don't know if the manager could renegotiate that, but currently there is not capacity that I'm aware of in that first floor space.
And this is space that we, the city, have held back as part of the lease. So it's already space that's under our control.
I understand that, but the space I was talking about is what the school department has that has been rehabbed and could be office space, but apparently there's nothing available. They're using it. Okay.
Some similar question, Chief. I guess are there economies of scale? How creative could we realistically be in exploring alternatives? Is it critical that for this space that it's on site? Is it something that could be done across town? I'm just trying to get don't dispute that it's going to be an expensive fix, but just I'm interested in knowing how creative can we be with the alternatives.
I think you can be creative. I think you can have alternatives. I think you could hot desk. You could do all those things. But every one of those things you do cut down on the ability of having a cross-departmental team where everyone within the organization knows what's going on within the prevention division. There's a real close tie between prevention and operations, and oftentimes the operation folks see something in the field, they go see the prevention people, and prevention people determine that there's a danger in a building, and they walk down the hall and talk to the operational folks. The more you disrupt that, the less those teams work together. So certainly can be creative, certainly are open to all those things. You just have to be aware that everything we do that moves away from the standard typical office environment with cross-departmental collaboration or cross-division in the department, it hurts the overall mission.
Understood. Thank you.
And so the $1 million is not reflected in the numbers.
Right, and I'll say, and again, I want to be. I didn't want you thinking
it
you were going to be able to do this for $100,000. I think $1 million is a realistic number from what I've seen for construction projects lately, and I think we can be creative. We may have some options that how we would fund that. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out to bond for it, but we need we want you to be aware that there are things beyond people and that you have to consider for the long-term viability of this.
Okay. Other questions?
Just
Andrew.
just looking forward a bit, when this rental ordinance hopefully is in place, I was thinking we might be able to leverage it to also talk to landlords about weatherization. And I'm wondering whether or not, if we hired two staff, that would also be something that those folks would be able to. Could it be in scope, and would that be kind of sufficient staffing if we expanded kind of the rental program in that direction?
I think the short answer is yes. If we provide them I'm going to call them inspectors, the training, then and I believe if Terry's on, even their most recent guidebook that they gave out looks at more than just the fire code violations, but as much some of the health and safety codes. So I think the short answer to that is yes. It could be. It would just require training and awareness for the inspectors.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Megan.
Yeah, I have been wanting to meet with a constituent. Our schedules just have not worked out. We have a working farm within our municipal borders that is not owned by the farming family. And we have engaged with this property as a city in order to make it possible for this farm to operate and to expand. There is the original farmhouse. I don't know how vague I should be on this property that the family has purchased, but they live in a rental home that is a long-term rental just within the vicinity. And I want to propose something. I have no idea if this will meet the residents' needs because we have not been able to meet, but I just wanted to kind of float this idea before we take it to the next step. You do not become wealthy on a small family-operated farm. This is not, a big Midwestern farm like we see out where I come from. And I think that this family has been able to look toward homeownership by using short-term rentals on the farmhouse while renting long-term in another house in order to make ends meet. And I know that there were reports done through, some organization. It was published through VT Digger. How there are families in the state who see this as a way to remain in a community that they have been outpriced, right? In which they've been outpriced. Now, I am asking this council to consider potentially, creative solutions that could be applied in the case that I've just described, where it would be a way for a small working farm and the family who is operating it to be able to remain in our city. I think that they are a valued business and valued residents. And so perhaps some kind of waiver for that kind of situation. Perhaps it could be a combination, because we know from other discussions that finding housing for farm workers is really challenging. And so if we wish to perhaps come up with a creative proposal where the farmhouse could serve as farm worker housing in a long-term situation past 6 months, and then have over the winter months when they are not cultivating the fields or as active, that could be a time for short term. So I was just floating this out there because I think this deserves some conversation. But like I said, I have not talked to the interested party. I've just received some emails about
I guess
this
I don't
concern.
quite understand how this would prevent that. I'm missing the need for and doesn't mean I'm against it. I just,
Well, it's not owner occupied currently.
it has to be, it can be tenant occupied.
So that was my
So
suggestion.
it
If we
can be
had,
tenant. It can be tenant occupied as long as the landlord allows it basically to be sublet.
Yeah, essentially,
So it sounds-
it sounds a little bit different than what you're describing, though. What
Right.
you're describing is they have this particular hypothetical it's a farmhouse that's unoccupied and that's used as a short-term rental.
correct,
Under the current draft of the ordinance, that would not be allowed.
right.
If they rented it out to a tenant, that tenant could short-term rental it if they had permission of the landlord, but the tenant would have to establish it as their primary residence.
So could we think about having, 6 plus 1 day long-term rental, and then the homeowner could, for seasonal workers, and then for 5 months or 6 months minus a day, that could be used as a short-term rental. Does that jibe with what?
I don't know if I'm exactly following the example, but there's always exceptions you can create. The danger of creating exceptions is they sometimes apply when you don't mean them to apply, and it sometimes makes an ordinance a little bit more complicated than you want it to be. But we can always try to come up with something if we can understand what exactly it is you're asking us to do.
Yeah. The other, and I was talking with not an Airbnb, actually. We were both not very happy about Airbnb, a bed and breakfast owner over the weekend. And she does a wonderful job in her business. And she suggested it could be helpful for students. It could be helpful for nurses, traveling nurses. It could be helpful for even faculty who are coming in to do kind of a semester. So finding kind of, a 6 month plus a day rental situation could be a creative solution for some folks who do not need to have a year-long lease. Yeah.
I don't think this ordinance would prevent a 6-month lease.
Okay.
Or any, I mean, that would be considered a long-term tenant under this ordinance, and that would be perfectly allowed. So if there was a student who's here for a semester or a visiting nurse who's here for less than a year, that would be. There's no prohibition in this ordinance against that. Just that the landlord would have to register the unit as a rental, and it would be subject to inspection.
And then for the remainder of the year, that homeowner could use it for a short-term rental.
No, I don't believe so. No. They have
That's
to find
the
another
way.
6-month tenant or another 3-month tenant or something like that.
Right.
But couldn't use it as a short-term rental unless it's owner-occupied or.
Because currently an owner-occupied residence, as long as you're there for 6 months and a day, and then you can go off to Florida or wherever, and have that then be a home that's used for short-term rentals for 6 months minus a day. So it's kind of a variation on that theme, is what I was.
So can I?
Yeah.
Sorry. I think what you're proposing is basically for farm worker housing, a delegation of the home ownership requirement to a long-term tenant on the property that would then enable short-term rental. So it would be a waiver or a variance to the ordinance.
Except she mentioned traveling nurses and.
It
Could be that.
Yeah.
Saying basically the farm owner would delegate the ownership right to a long-term tenant, thereby enabling short-term rentals. I think we need to look into the possibility of whether we could legally do that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Paul,
Hi.
Can you go to the mic?
you want to you can stand up and.
Paul Connor, Planning and Zoning Director. The ordinance as discussed right now, the short-term part kicks in for stays of less than 30 days. So if it's more than 30 days, whether it's 31 days, 6 months, a year, that's all considered a long-term rental. So I don't know if that addresses some of these categories. I don't know how long traveling nurses or farm workers stay, but if it's more than 30 days, that there may not be a challenge here.
Wait, this sounds to me like someone has a farm.
Can you speak right
This
into the
sounds to me
mic?
someone has a farm for a good portion of the year. It's occupied by farm workers, and they're trying to make as much as they can during the portion of the year when it's not occupied by farm workers, and it may well be making short term, less than 30 days. That feels like something that should be okay to me, honestly. If it's a building that's used for seasonal workers, and because of the seasonality, it's unoccupied for a portion of the year, feels to me like that should be okay to allow short-term rentals during that portion.
It may be helpful too if we talk offline about it, and perhaps it's completely within the scope of what we've done, or else maybe we have to tweak it a little bit. But if we understand your question, it may be more helpful for us to talk offline and bring you back an option that at least tries to address it. Does that work?
Absolutely, we can do that. One concern I think that we would want to, and part of our conversations we want to have is to move the conversation into who is get the rental makes it a little bit more complicated. It goes beyond what we're right now. We're not asking who are you renting it to for the 6 months and who are you not renting it to.
Right.
Like if it's visiting nurses or students or something.
And I think because of the complexity, we need to have the homeowner be a local homeowner. So that would satisfy, my concern that this not be, some outside investment entity wanting to, kind of play with our rules. And I really want to have that homeowner being a resident.
It just does get very complex once we start putting in waivers or exceptions, and it does put our staff in even a more challenging spot. So I just caution. Well, let us take a look at it, but it does cause us pause. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay, are there other questions about the ordinance, or do you want to go right to the money? I mean, because that's an important piece. And if we can't agree that we want to charge X to pay for this program, then we're in a different place.
I have one more question
Okay.
about the ordinance. So are there any, in drafting this, as I understand it and as I read it, I don't see, one of the concerns that I might have and is adding more of a cost burden onto managers of low-income housing properties or properties that are otherwise have some controls. And as I understand it right now, with the fee structure, it's universal across. There's no exceptions made. And I think the fee structure as it stands is very reasonable. If I think about it in terms of a business that's already operating on very low margins, number one, and number two, as you start to operate that at scale, and then if you think about regular turnover, that could be something that, again, is eroding into already a very tight bottom line for a nonprofit. In your A, is my assumption correct that there is no consideration there? And B, was that something that was discussed or considered during the deliberation process? And can you explain what your thought process was and how we arrived at where we're at?
So you are correct. There is no discount for low-income housing or affordable housing or anything beyond a unit cost $100 per year. And a unit is a unit unless, as it's currently proposed, unless you're in a building with greater than 40 units. Did have some conversations with members of the Affordable Housing Committee, do I have that right? Who certainly are advocating for a reduced fee or a waiver fee for those occupancies. That's a policy decision for you to make. I will tell you that the plan currently doesn't pay it for itself, and without staffing, you can't have the plan. So you're, just to be completely blunt, you either have to raise the rate on other units or not have a program. And so, yes, part of a discussion, but but the reality is the reality, and that's why it is. But it is a policy decision for you.
Understood.
That begs a really good question. Like in Burlington, the BHA, I mean, do they inspect like, Decker Tower every year? Do they inspect every unit there?
So my understanding in Burlington is that their code enforcement department does inspect those, but it's on a 1 to 5 year schedule, right? So if you have very few violations, it's 5 years. If you have significant violations, it's every year. So yes.
Do they pay every year?
Yes.
But this had an exemption for new builds for 3 years.
Right.
So you does that mean you wouldn't pay the fee for the first 3 years of a new business?
Yeah, and
or a new
exactly.
housing.
And the theory there is, so many of these buildings paid a pretty substantial permit fee when they were built. We're in there doing inspections every week during construction. That, I guess, in our opinion, they've kind of paid that fee for the first few years, and there would be relatively few violations your first few years. And so that was the thought process. But again, you're welcome to change that. It's another policy question.
Well, they're also built to code.
Correct.
Right. And
Which
inspected while they're being
so
built.
many of the rentals or homes out there in South Burlington are not built, well, or at least not to the current code.
They're old.
So that is, I mean, I would support giving them a break, certainly, for a new build. That would be nuts. But if it was just 100, that's spread over 12 months, so it's not a huge cost to a renter. I mean, I don't know.
I agree. It's
I
not a huge
mean,
cost.
I know it's paid by the owner, but they all pass it off. Pass it on to the renter, and I know $8 a month. That's about what it would be. Can mean a lot, but it also could mean that the home you're in has appropriate electrical outlets and, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide, and it's a safer place to live.
That's right.
It has some value to it.
Yes.
If it's, and I agree, if it's $8 a month.
Well,
That's what-
if it's $100 a month.
Yeah.
It's probably $8.50, right? Or per month.
$8.50 per month.
$8.50 if
Times
you aggregate,
12 is
right.
pretty close
so
to
it's
100, isn't it?
96. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, Helen, is if there's an operator who has 600, 700 units, and on average is doing 100 times 600, right? That's $60,000 to $70,000 in margin. Right, and would that when you look at it from that perspective,
Well,
would that
and they get $1,500 a month for each of those 600 units. I mean, do that math.
It's still
a
$8
drop in the
and
bucket.
change. It's still $8 and change per unit per month. It's the same. It's the same math.
it is?
But
I just my concern is less when is the operator going to look at that $50,000 and say I need to raise my rates by $10 each month, or does that $8 to $10 turn into a much larger number?
Well, we don't have control over that, do we?
No, ma'am.
I mean, you'd have to have, what do they call it when they don't let the rent go up? They have it in New York. Rent control. Yeah, but we're not talking about rent control.
No.
We're just trying to get.
Not yet.
Well, are there other questions?
I do
about
like the
that?
discount for buildings greater than 40 units because of our inclusionary zoning requirement. That would typically mean that there are affordable units, which I think that's a way to not include a specific provision for affordable units, but yet acknowledge.
So then let's go back to how we raise the money. I mean, it's going to come back to.
I like the 110 per unit and $90 per unit in buildings greater than 40 units.
So that raises 110 and 90 raises 295.
400, yeah.
400, which doesn't quite cut it either.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a little bit.
that does. If the 11090 pretty much covers the program.
But it doesn't cover the renovation.
No, it doesn't cover the renovation, but I think I would propose that you, if you're feeling okay about the 11090 to cover the reoccurring cost, let us come back to you again with some hard numbers, right? So we can spend a little bit of money on an engineering firm, architectural firm. We'll get some hard numbers. We'll come back with you some options about how you could perhaps do that with internal monies you already have, and pay it back over time. Give us some time to do that. I think that's the next logical step if you're liking the things that are going along the way.
The 1 million is a non-starter for me. If you can come back with an alternative to being in the firehouse and have 4 offices, whatever you need, that's a much lower cost. It's reasonable. I'd be glad to entertain it, but right now I can't support this. Thinking about $1 million renovation for this program, so you got to find some alternative. It's not going to work for me. Sorry.
What's the concern?
The concern is too much money. I mean, we have expenses that are recurring one time. I understand that, office equipment, but we were never told that we had to do a complete renovation for $1 million for this. So that's a real surprise. And for the type of organization that you want to do, there are lots of ways to communicate. I understand you'd like to be able to have the people right there with you, but not for $1 million, no.
So let us do the work.
Sure.
This is back of the envelope. We're trying to be very intentional here because this is a brand new thing and not get ahead of where you're okay with us going. So if you're conceptually on board with the idea of on an annual basis charging an amount that is going to cover the cost of operations, let us do the work on the one-time cost, bringing back some models of what those rates would have to be to cover that cost over time. And then, if you're okay with that, then we can have the first reading of the ordinance and warn a public hearing.
That sounds good.
Okay, are you in favor of the 110 and 90?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean,
okay. Is that consensus?
Yeah.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Yeah.
On that? So, I think a red flag in this analysis for me that you're talking about now is the affordable housing waiver or reduced fee. That if that is something that the council wants to look at, then that's another financial model we're going to have to.
Well, I thought that the $90 per unit in buildings with greater than 40 units was kind of taking care of that. And
for the most part.
Yeah, I think the 11090 works financially for the program today. Yes. And so I think what I understand the conversation to be that in several of those large units has inclusionary housing, which this discount would then apply to every unit within that building. And so there's the discount being applied.
Right.
Oh, wow. Well, it would be good to know. I mean, we only require 10%, right, of affordable housing? Is it 12, 10? Originally, we wanted 25%, I think.
Yeah.
12-unit buildings, so inclusionary kicks out a much lower number than the 40 mentioned.
yeah.
But it's 12% if it's 100 units.
Let us do some modeling.
Yeah, well, that would be good to have that modeling out and see what that costs. You can't have a different charge depending on what the unit is?
It's a policy decision that you can have us put in any
I mean, if
fee
you want
we'd
to
like.
put a lower rate on the affordable units, I'm all for it. But if there's, out of 100 units, if 85 are at, market rate, I don't know.
I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, that the apartment buildings in our city up until recently have all had affordable units in them, and now that we actually have it in our rules, they will have affordable units going forward. So I think that when we have, 12 units or above, I mean that $20 reduction, I think adds up when you have, several units, including some market rate units, right? It's not all affordable units. It's
No, I understand. I'm just saying when it's a big development and just a portion of it, that 12% is affordable, is this viable to not earn the 110 for all the people who presumably can afford that, because they're paying market rate. Yeah, maybe they can't afford it, but I don't. That's why I don't mind carving out the affordable units in a building.
Well, you know,
I'm just not certain I want to
right.
do it for the whole building that has 10 affordable units and then all units.
But I think, I mean, I don't know, but I think that if, as a building owner, you wouldn't charge across the board because you have these formulas, right? 30% of the area median income or 60% of the area median income. And I would assume that it would have to fit into that formula in order to satisfy our rules, which means they couldn't go over by $10. They couldn't, you know, and so that $10 would have to go onto a market rate unit. Does that make sense what I'm saying, or is that
you know, I don't know in terms
in
of,
my perfect world?
I mean, is that true when we do the impact fees, that we charge a little less of impact for affordable units? I don't think
I'm talking about the building owner.
Well, I know the building owner pays the impact fees.
Right.
So we don't, I mean, this is stating the obvious, which I know you don't. We don't have control over how they handle the expense on their side of the books. So I think there is, I don't know how that happens with the private on the developer side of things, not necessarily.
But so what does it mean though to be affordable? There must be a limit on what the rent can be.
Yes, there's formulas. It's
Right?
such a percentage.
Meg must be right that the landlord wouldn't have license to just pass it through because they're limited by the formula, right?
Yeah, that's my thinking.
I just to also point out that you're going to be running a deficit for the first 3 years as you start to ramp up, you know, people, you know, responding to you, paying you. It's not going to be a step function, right? You're not going to get everybody all at once. It's going to be at least a couple of years, I think, before you have every unit sending you money, you think?
So I think we were conservative on the number of units. Like we didn't count any of the units on the street because they're less than 3 years old. Right. So, you know, we know we're going to pick up some units that we didn't count. We know we'll have some units coming on probably year 1 or year 2 that this building over next door has been in effect a year. So I don't know that we'll run a $100,000 deficit. It's going to be lean margins the first couple of years.
I'm just thinking of the cat and dog license issue earlier.
I think what is different here, and to some extent how we very quickly came up with an accurate that we have about 3,000 units we know of. There's a handful of property managers that we have good relationships with. Call them up and say, how many units do you have at this one, this one, this one? So I think those we're going to catch very easy. Okay. The person who's going to Airbnb of an ADU in their backyard, we're probably never going to catch that until someone reports it or something like that happens. So I think the big units we're going to catch.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're sort of set on the 110 and 90, and we'll figure out if there's any deduction for what the numbers look like, and then you'll come back to us with the real cost of retrofitting or establishing appropriate space.
Works for
I
me.
do like you're buying electric cars though.
I'll say this: we bought them in Burlington for the prevention division before I left, and it's a great use for electric vehicle.
Yeah. So there you go with some savings, even when it's 22 cents.
I have to say that coming back from Rochester, where hot rodding is apparently the teenage thing to do, like wheelies on motorcycles down major thoroughfares through 3 a.m. in the morning.
Where was this?
This is Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
I
That
just
was an event.
I don't even want to speak into the microphone. This is apparently a nationwide phenomenon. And you know, you leave Vermont and you enter the United States. So we just have to really realize that we have an amazing, standard here.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you for
so
your
have
consideration
we
of that.
do you have any other questions for us? Clarification, thanks?
I'm just staying because I'm the next on the agenda as well. So
Oh, okay. All right, so you're excused, Colin,
And
for the moment.
something else, they do this at the county level. So all of the permitting for bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs is at the county level. I just thought I'd throw that out
It's
there
a
as
whole
well, which
nother
is
taxing.
it's a
whole
good
other
segue to dispatching.
regional government. Oh, does anyone online want to make a comment or have a question? Looks like Dahlbeck. We got a little sign. If you turn your face on or video, we can, or just talk. No? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Barb. Would you come up, please?
One quick comment to put this all in some kind of perspective. In the little town where I live in the winter.
Okay, tell people who you are and then.
Hi, I'm Barbara Service. I live in Summerwood, South
He's
Burlington.
the birthday girl.
Doing okay for age 77, you know?
Yes, you are.
Anyway, what? Yeah. May 15th, 1946. What can I tell you? The town where I spend the winter has a permit for any kind of short-term rentals. It's $1,800 per unit per year. So I just thought I'd toss that out.
1,800?
You heard me. 1,800. Now, the other part of that is that the Coachella Music Festival that you may have heard of, people rent a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo for $5,000 for the weekend. So it all balances out, but I think it's just to put it in a little perspective. And I think that I want to thank you for being careful about this conversation, especially with regard to affordable housing, but also looking across the spectrum. But I also think it's a good idea for the city. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. All right, so now we're on to item 13, which is we're going to receive an update on the regional dispatch discussions. So we have Police Chief Sean Burke and our Fire Chief. This is your role in this. Your Fire Chief, Steve Locke.
So I'll tee it up and Chief Burke will jump in as well. So we wanted to take a moment just to update you both on the regional dispatch project as well as some almost parallel track of dispatch work that's being done between the chief and I and some partners as we await for potential action at the regional dispatch level. So most of you probably remember in 2018, the community voted to support moving, along with 5 other communities, moving into or creating the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority that would create a regional county model for emergency dispatching. And those efforts had been proceeding pretty nicely in collecting, gathering quite a lot of grant money. And up to a few months ago, around the end of the calendar year last year, we're proceeding in a way that we were anticipating hire an executive director and to begin dispatching sometime in late 2023. At that point, Colchester made the decision that they were not going to be able to fund continued involvement within it, and then the financial model somewhat started to fall apart. The legislature had earmarked about $11 million last legislative session for regional dispatch efforts. We initially were awarded about $750,000 for the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority. That money got clawed back as the state decided to reevaluate the direction that they were going. And just last couple of days, the final House bill, the final budget bill included new language that does say the state is responsible for dispatching. The state sees it that way, and that they're going to create I don't want to call it a study group, but it's a transitional group that's going to allow basically to set up parameters of how dispatching should work, how it could work at the regional level, with the caveat that that of the 11 million, 4.5 million could be released to. It does say areas of the state that are in dire need, and so we may be able to make an argument that are ready to go, and so we may be able to make an argument that Chittenden County is one of those. It's too early to tell. I do. While this is, it's good that they're at least going to release some of the money. I'm worried that this is going to be something that slows down all of our regional efforts, and to be quite honest, I almost feels like a poison pill to me, although I don't think it was done that way. It was done with the best of intentions, but it's making it extremely complicated when you're trying to run our own center and stand up a new center at the same time. And so I think some part of what we're here to talk about tonight, probably more importantly, is that part of the CCPSA award was about $225,000 for dispatch consoles. Well, in the South Burlington capital budget this year, there was about that same amount of money for dispatch consoles. We were able to have the state transfer ownership of those same radio stations to the city of South Burlington, so saving us those monies. But more importantly, we're going to repurpose those monies still within the dispatch center to allow us some freshening up of the space, reworking the workstations, so we would have the ability to have four workstations, 4 dispatch positions. And perhaps we have some neighbors that are interested in working with us for dispatching. So a mini regional without being through the CCPSA. And so what we're seeing is a parallel track here to perhaps accomplish what we were always wanted, which was efficiency and collaboration with our neighbors, but at the same time doing it now under the city of South Burlington and a shared services model with some of our regional partners or some of our neighboring partners. Some technology upgrades that we're going to be able to do, what we're looking to buy into is sharing the same computer-aided dispatch system that the city of Burlington uses. When that system was bought, it was bought with the agreement that it could be built out. And so by getting these dispatch consoles for transferred ownership to the states, allowing us to use those same capital dollars to invest in that, which will almost take a year for implementation, but that's going to make our work of our dispatchers more efficient and much easier for us in the fire department to share resources. I think finally, before I turn it over to Chief Burke, I have to just, our overall goal is to get to the point where we have 2 dispatchers on 24/7. If I've never been a dispatcher, but I've been in a lot of dispatch centers, and that is an extremely stressful job, an extremely difficult job. And when you're in that center alone at 2 a.m. or 7 p.m, and a significant call comes in, you're behind the ball from the beginning because the phone's ringing. You're trying to speak to your officers or your firefighters, and so I know our shared goal is to try to find a way that we can achieve that, and some part of that will come with if we can find alternative revenue sources. So, anyways, I'll turn it over to the chief. But we did want to chat with you about where we're at, what's going on, and the great work really our dispatchers are doing every day.
Thank you, Sean Burke, Police Chief. I think the only thing I wanted to add is that we had budgeted for new radio consoles because our current consoles are at end of life. So this is fortuitous in the sense that if we can repurpose these radio consoles, get our dispatch center up and running to a level where it sustains our operations and potentially starts the regional partnership, that's fantastic. But our equipment does need to be replaced.
Mm-hmm. I just have a question in terms of, originally when we were talking about this, way back, before either of you were in Burlington, in South Burlington. You're both in Burlington. And it seemed like there was a significant challenge that the city of Burlington kept bringing forward. Is that just the wrong recollection? I mean, there were all sorts of interesting comments or discussions about, what's the pay level and, towns have different pay levels, so that would be really tough. But it also, I think it was around the CAD system, and that was pretty expensive, and not everyone wanted to buy it, and Burlington was just, they were going to buy it. And I'm just wondering if that's holds back a little bit. I mean, if they'd gone to the legislature and said, hey, we're in this, we're a big part of the community or the county, let's go for it.
So, to be fair to our partners in Burlington, I do think in the last couple of weeks that has happened, that the mayor has been very vocal about this, the legislation that was been before them this year. I would say, having been at Winooski as well, all of the communities face different challenges going to regional dispatch and face different needs going to regional dispatch. The one on most communities, but for Burlington and South Burlington, only ever operate with one on, which is as a manager, a very scary place to be. That's a problem to try and solve. That wasn't Burlington's problem. Burlington had other challenges, and I think trying to set up Union Municipal District, a shared government to solve everybody's problems with all of those chiefs and all of those elected officials is a big, heavy lift, which is why the chiefs and I are interested in this parallel path where we explore meeting our specific goals, which are 2 on at all times and getting CAD, that may lead to an improved shared services agreement with other communities for that economies of scale that then may lead to a Union Municipal District in the future. We think that that's a good kind of incremental step change. So we just wanted to we've been making these decisions and kind of going in this path, but wanted to make sure that you all were on board with that kind of stepped system over time. And I also just want to underline what both the chiefs said, which are we have exceptional dispatchers on staff now. We are fully staffed on our dispatch team, which is pretty unique in the county. And we also want to demonstrate to them, to our dispatchers, that we want to ensure that we maintain our excellent services as we think about these changes over time. And people know that they have a good employment option with us or with a future partner agency.
So does shared services mean that we'll maybe have some excess capacity and we rent that capacity out to neighboring towns for a fee? Is that what that means, shared services?
Basically, it means that other communities contract with us and we provide them services rather than what CCPSA is, which is a Union Municipal District where we stand up a whole new government with a whole new board of directors to administer a shared model.
Right.
Champlain Water District.
Contract out our excess capacity for a fee.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily build extra capacity unless we had those contracts, which is the risk with shared services agreements for the host community.
But can the dispatcher from like Shelburne sort of join forces so there's some additional staffing for, I mean, is that how you're kind of seeing it? Or are communities who want to partner or buy our services then just can their whole system?
But so I think the obvious partner is a community that doesn't necessarily have its own dispatchers, and it would be more looking for switching where they're getting the contracted services.
Oh, okay.
So is there an opportunity to get a few other communities to share the resource, or for us to work with them and provide services for them in some way that they get paid, and then if we get enough people, then just to translate into the Union District? Or
I think the chief and I are interested in this. I'm trying to be delicate here, saying we don't want to ruin a good thing, and so some part of it is taking on the right partner that's allows for efficiency and sharing our resources and all the good things that regionalizing services can bring and some sharing of the money, but at the same time not going too big too fast that we disrupt our current workforce and create a problem that of our own making. So I think is that a good way to put it?
It's exactly what happened at the state level. So as the state Department of Public Safety consolidated from 4 down to 2 dispatch centers, the employees not complained, but just observed and could no longer work given the complexity of operations in those centers. And really a focus of the legislature has been of late is if DPS rolls back their commitment to providing services to towns that have no other option, what does that mean? And that's the critical need that the legislature is looking at. They're less concerned with communities like ours where we can sustain operations. However, we need to sustain operations because we've had a lot of growth in terms of not only the city and population, but especially as fire-based EMS has seen dramatic increase in call volume, complexity on the police side. We're asking our dispatchers to do a lot. So although contracted services may be fantastic in the future, the goal of this project now is to get a sustainable emergency communication center that's professionalized, adequate, that our employees want to continue to work at.
So do you need like another 10 to 15,000 people in terms of community size to add to South Burlington to justify 2 dispatchers full time?
So there's not a population formula. You have to look at call volume. And right now, so if a serious car accident comes in, which one did earlier today, the dispatcher has to make a decision. Do I send the police first or do I send the fire and EMS first when we only have one on? When we had that incident at the University Mall in February of 2021, the dispatcher was in there alone. I know that we came in and we talked about that. It was actually the foundation for the 7th full-time employee. That was terrifying. I walked down to the dispatch center and I couldn't believe what our dispatcher was trying to accomplish there. So right now, the demands on our center really require 2 full-time employees on at all times. And then we can, look at what communities potentially want to partner with us and what would that mean operationally.
And I think the number, and correct me, I think what we're talking about we would need 2 more FTEs to get to 2 24/7. I think maybe. So if I misspoke that, please. But I think just so you get in your own frame of reference what it takes to get there. So that's not the ask now, but if we can do some offsetting revenue, that obviously makes everyone's life a little bit easier.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I would encourage you to keep working.
Yeah. Thanks for the update.
Thank you for the update, and I have a lot of faith in you too.
Gentlemen.
Okay, item 14, we're going to receive a status update on Hubbard Park, the preliminary engineering and next steps.
So
And is Erica going? Oh, she is here. Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Sorry.
Is somebody going to do the presentation? Or were you thinking I was going to do it? Apparently I'm doing it. Talk amongst yourselves while I pull it up. No, I can do it. So this is one of the, just a quick table setting. This is one of those very multi-year projects that we've been working on that has garnered some community feedback. So, we are a moving train, kind of going down long-term multi-year planning, and we want to give you a status update. Oh boy, I hope this works. To make sure we are still pulling in the direction you would like us to pull. Feel free to fix it.
Just don't break it.
Wasn't sure what Tim was doing.
Oh, no. Introductions. So, Holly Reese, Recreation and Parks Director. And I'm Erica Quallen, Deputy Director of Capital Projects with Public Works.
So as Jesse said, we're just going to do a little review of history. So the past 10 years consolidated into a nutshell. And just for frame of reference, this project has had 5 different recreation and parks directors involved in it and a 2-year pandemic. So we're going to try to catch everybody up to speed here. And of course, the objective for tonight is just to, present the design efforts to this point and also review some of the council actions as well as public input. So the project area that we're talking about, just to make sure everyone is in the same place, is what was known as the Underwood property and has been renamed to honor and celebrate Tom Hubbard. So the Hubbard Recreation and Natural Area is along Nolan Farm Road and Spear Street. So that green area. And then this is the history and timeline. So starting back in 2013, when the council approved the acquisition of the Underwood parcel with the Conservation Fund. And then in 2014, quickly realizing that there needed to be a task force created to take a look at the property and do a visioning. That visioning began in March of 2015, which led us into developing into the comprehensive plan the need to do a master plan for this parcel. And then in 2018, we contracted the SE Group to be the provider of that master plan process. We'll get into a little bit of what that public process looked like. And then the resulting was the beginning designs that Erica will go into depth for the passive recreation component. And then again in 2020 is when we started leasing the land for agriculture with Common Roots. So
quick question.
Yep.
What year was it we had the tethered hot air balloon?
That was 2018.
August?
Yep. It was an August day.
When Maggie went up in the balloon?
I don't think Maggie went up. Did she go up in the balloon? Well, there you go.
I can prove it. Thanks.
So director number 4. So if we can advance to the next slide, we can, discuss kind of the council's involvement to date, and some of these dates will overlap from the previous slide. But again, the council approved the 2013 purchase of the land, and then council did the creation of the Underwood Task Force. In 2016 was the approval of the Open Space and Natural Area Enhancement Plan. We call that OSNAP. And then based on that was the task force to then kind of carry that plan out and formulate those numbers. And then in 2016 was the recommendation approval from those spaces and what we were going to do with those. You'll remember it's a pretty color-coded chart of priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. And Erica can go into more detail. I think she probably looks at it pretty frequently. And then in 2020, of course, was the approval for the actual 4 acres of leased land for Common Roots, which they are actively farming. And then in terms of public outreach to date, the public was involved in the visioning process, which led to the master plan process. As Tim noted, there was quite a festive event that included a hot air balloon and a food truck, as well as multiple stations around the parcel to kind of hit at some of those target areas. And people were actually given, funny money to put into different pockets to show their prioritization of what they wanted to see on this land. It was a great process, and then out of that came a report that was shared in another community iteration where there was then a ranking similar to the dots that happen at the retreat, but not quite as much fun. So that public workshop happened as well. And then in 2021, Ashley Parker, who was the project manager for the open space and bike ped projects at that point, as well as Justin Rabideau and myself led that public workshop. It was actually attended by the Natural Resources Committee, the Recreation and Parks Committee, and the Bike and Ped Committee in kind of a shared public meeting to talk about that first development, which was the passive recreation area. When the community did the vision framework, these are kind of the 10 guiding principles that were developed, and significantly were to promote natural resources, agriculture, and recreation resources throughout the park. And then we can kind of go through to see that, natural resource conservation and sustainability was certainly a big component. And then supporting that was the need for getting people onto the land of all ages and all abilities. So there could be a focus on education. And that's where some of the other pieces came in as well. Another component of this was to make sure that it provided a gateway to recreation and a conduit of connectivity along our park inventory, and helped string the park system along. There was a high desire to have a lot of different elements, different reasons why people might interface with this land and come to this space. A structure was seen as an anchor that would provide 4 seasons worth of activity. And there's been some different iterations of what that might look like, an event barn perhaps, or some sort of indoor covered space. But one thing that was really important was that there wasn't a desire to overbuild this piece of property and land. While both active and passive recreation were desirable, kind of the developed soccer field or a developed baseball field or something that was a singular focus was taken off as a priority and was more, organic layout for a variety of different activities. Trails that have already been established in the woods, mowed paths, as well as, spaces for people to safely get to some viewing pavilions or areas to engage with the land. And then this is just a concept. I'll point out a couple of pieces here. So the kind of lime greenish areas are agricultural in those circular pieces, and then some more community gardens, perhaps a flower garden. Much of anything that's lime green is agricultural based. When you first, at that top star on Nolan Farm Road, that would be the access point or the entry point with some parking and then some vegetative buffering. At this point in the visioning framework, there were a couple different stormwater amenities that were imagined, and then you can see the connected white dots are walking trails that would kind of meander and circle through and connect to the woods as well. So broad brush stroke here, but just so you had a visual. And then that got strengthened into a master plan, and the strategic planning focused on, these 6 areas. So agricultural, passive recreation, and we consider that when people just come onto the land, and active recreation is something that's more planned or, incentivized through a developed program or event, as well as an event facility, and, taking care of the natural resources that are there, and any supportive facilities like parking, or, lighting or, vegetative structures or anything like that. And so then if we break up those a little bit just to see, what those tabs really are articulating, the community gardens as well as the lease for the agriculture make up that. Right now there are those 4 leased acres. There's also water on the site and electrical conduit. For passive recreation, there's, mode trails that are there now. These would also be places to come to. So a table setting, so you could come to a picnic table, you could come to a shade structure, you could come to a specific site that would support, views of sunsets or also other viewing options. Active recreation, so open field space for people to fly kites, throw a ball, anything like that, as well as a natural playground and potentially a tree house. Clearly rich in natural resources, so habitat protections, invasive species removals, and stormwater improvements. And then those supporting facilities that we talked about, so lighting and bike racks and trail markers, and of course the anchor of supported parking. And then that kind of got refined into this 2018 master plan concept. And so on this one, Nolan Farm is down below, and then Spear Street on the right. And here you'll see the mapped out 4 acres where Common Roots actually is farming. That's a little more clear. And then you'll still see the desire to have kind of some looping trails, as well as, through the meadowlands of the park into the forested area, as well as connection north and south, which we'll get into a little more. But you can see you'd come into the park, access the park, and then there would be some sort of desire to get a little further into the park for best viewing options. And then that's where Erica's gonna jump in.
Thank you, Holly, for a great history that I was not here for. So this is kind of where I've jumped in, and I've been here before talking about bike ped infrastructure. So this, in addition to enhancing the open space that the city owns, this is also a really key part of our bike ped network that's been laid out in a few different areas in both the visioning process and the master plan. It's called out that there's a paved bike path connection or shared use path connection across the park to continue this growing connection that's happening along Spear Street. In the 2020 South Burlington Bike Ped Feasibility Study, which is where this graphic comes from, it lays out and really formalizes the recommendation of doing a path network that's not right along Spear Street. We know Spear Street is a really common route for like road cyclists, the confident road cyclists who are out on their rides on the weekend, or just folks that are generally more comfortable sharing space with the with vehicles. But as our path network grows, Spear Street is a place that has a bit of a gap. So this study recommended that between Swift and the South Village neighborhood, it comes off of the road to the west here. North is on the left side here. So the Shelburne town line is at the edge. It's that thin black line here. And these are coming along. South Village has low stress networks and shared use paths through there, takes you across South and North Jefferson. And there are just some little gaps, but this is a really big gap in this area. And also as Spear Meadows continues, that northern section towards Swift Street also progresses. So moving on to the next slide. Sorry, mine's not as clear because I have two-sided. You could see Holly flipping easily. So laying this out just kind of in the context of what we're in design for right now, some of those pieces that Holly ran through in the Open Space Project Task Force recommendations, there were, that was accepted by the council at that time. It allowed open space funds in Hubbard or to be used for projects in Hubbard. And then in 2018, that's when those projects got laid out. And so just to kind of highlight some of the background thinking also, there was a survey that was put out during that master planning process. And one of the questions here was about, is there a need for improved bike infrastructure accessing the park? And you can see that most people said yes here. It was 67%. And with some of these approvals that we've laid out, design began in January 2020. And this was just the initial contract to do some of the pre-formalized design, doing more of the conceptual level design to just kind of see the feasibility of what was laid out in that master planning document. And as Holly mentioned, there's been a lot going on between 2020 and now. So there was a bit of a hiatus in it, but it's been picking up in earnest in 2022. So the design elements that I'm going to run you through are laid out here. There's the 10-foot paved shared use path, an improved parking lot that has some low-level lighting, some accessible parking spaces, and that connects you to the existing path network and the proposed path. This also has a viewing area that has some natural elements, some stone wall, a mowed area, some new shade trees put in, and some open grass space. And a conversation that we've been having is about the potential to include public art in this project, having a little section off of the path that would, we'd work with the Public Art Committee to get their approval on one of the pieces. They've been working with an artist and looking for a location. And then with all of this, obviously, we need to treat stormwater. It was part of the master planning process as part of the natural resource conservation section of this. And so that is also in design. So looking at it graphically, we'll zoom into each of these, but this is kind of the overall look. We have Nolan Farm Road on the left and Upswept Lane and South Point on the right here. So the parking area, the driveway gets realigned to be directly across from Pinnacle. It's a bit safer of an intersection, access point there. So
That is not where it is now?
no, it is up just a little bit higher on this, about where the shared use path is shown to be starting.
Where the, pardon? The shared use, oh, so
yeah.
it's on the other side?
Yep, so it's up there, just barely off alignment, so it's that kind of wonky offset. And I've heard from folks that the headlights from that area kind of shine in a very inconvenient way for some folks. So this realignment of it, there are some hedges shown on the lower part of that parking lot to shield those headlights that folks are in there. And you can see it takes you over to the overlook viewing area, and then a very concept level location for public art. The stormwater is all being cited currently, so it's not shown here. It would just be kind of blobs. That's the like active stage of design we're in right now. And then it gets you to the mode path connection that takes you into Upswept Lane.
So the area for common routes is not on this map. It's below, it's kind of to the right of those two homes.
Yeah, it's underneath where it says overlook viewing area. The image is cut off, but it's under there, yeah. So going through each design element, the first one is the entrance and parking area. Like I mentioned, it's realigned to be in a bit more advantageous area. It would be a paved lot, about 25-30 spaces with accessible parking spaces in there. Native shrubs to block the headlights because there are those houses to the east of it, to the west, to make sure that no light would be just shining in their house. And then some low-level lighting for personal safety, not something that would kind of spill out of the parking lot, but enough for folks to feel comfortable getting back to their cars or getting back to their bike, whatever they took to the park. And then this includes those support facilities like trailhead signage and a map. So this is just a little graphic looking at it a bit closer, showing all of those elements. That low-level lighting, it would just be about just about four lights. So keeping it very dim, and that's something that after park hours they would go really, really dark, potentially like a motion sensor, something like that, so that they're not obstructing and spilling out of the park.
It could go on with animals, though, that could be walking by.
Yeah, that would be something we'd have to explore. We're looking at that in another study also, looking at the sensitivity or how it would work in a setting like this. Because if it's closed, ideally,
Lights go on all night. Yeah.
and if it's closed, ideally there isn't anyone there, and so they could just be kept very dim or off at a certain time. But yeah, those details will definitely come later. So now going to the shared use path, like we saw in the picture, and we'll see it again, it connects from Nolan Farm Road to Upswept Lane. There is currently a shared use path on Nolan Farm, so this would have a crosswalk that would go right across there to connect the two paths. And then this would bring you to where the mode path section is, just past the park parcel limit. We do have an easement through there, so potential to formalize that connection in the future, but there's a stream crossing there. There's a very informal bridge, and it opens up a lot more to do that connection as part of this project. But it is
currently maintained by the city, or is that part of, just people, it's self-done? Okay.
Okay, yeah, and this, again, it just going for the all ages and abilities in terms of physical abilities and also comfort with where folks want to walk or bike. So, yep, we looked at this, and we can pull it back up later if you have questions about it. So now getting into the viewing area, on the graphic you could see it's accessible from the path, the paved path. It would be a kind of stone dust walkway, and there'd be a spot right at that little intersection where you could drop your bikes and go down, maybe have lunch or something. It's oriented to face west for those beautiful views through there. There's a stone wall on the back of it, a low stone wall, so that you can kind of separate yourself. And there's seating, picnic tables, Adirondack chairs, and then there's also a small mowed grass area for folks. I know I like to just bring a blanket and sit in the grass, so leaving that option there too. And the current plan is to have some swamp white oak trees that could grow pretty large, provide some nice shade in that area also. So this is, you can see kind of where the trees are currently being proposed. That mowed area is up in the front, and then the back it would all be stone dust. So it's crushed stone, an ADA surface, so anyone could get to this area. There's some picnic tables and chairs, and that thicker line on the back is the stone wall.
So a stone dust path is ADA accessible?
It's harder to maintain, but when it's maintained properly, it is, if it's packed properly. So going to public art, this is just a potential opportunity here. It's something that we've been having ongoing conversations with. I think it's a cool idea here, so I'm hoping the collaboration moves forward. But we would have a space for a sculpture installation from a local artist. Again, a stone dust path would take you to the sculpture with opportunities for some natural wood seating and interpretive signage about the art and about the park, kind of anything we want to give people an opportunity to learn about. And so that's the whole design. I'm sure we'll have questions and we can go back and look at them. But I wanted to give you a rundown also of what's been spent to date, because we are pretty far in this project. So just kind of looking at where we are in the scale of all of this. The 2013 purchase was about $1.6 million from the Conservation Fund. And then as it became eligible to start using the Open Space and Conservation Fund, that was used towards the visioning framework and the master planning, totaling about $55,000. And then currently in our permitting and design effort, we've spent about $53,000, mostly from open space funds, but because this is that shared use path connection, it becomes penny for paths eligible. And this is an eligible rec impact fee project. So the design elements that I showed you, so this would be what is forthcoming in terms of cost. Looking at all of these broken out by the element here, but it totals to a little over $600,000. This is a very preliminary cost estimate. It's the one we have most recent. So some of these are kind of lump sum guesses as we hone material costs and see what this construction season brings us in terms of cost. But a lot of it is in the where paving is, because that involves gravel and the pavement, and some construction space, and then it gets all reseeded. The viewing area, and stone dust paths are another 100,000 or so, and then there's all of the other incidentals like preparing the site. And this does include, I believe it's a 15% contingency and a 10% mobilization and demobilization. It's bringing everything out and bringing it back. So we're holding a pretty high contingency at this point because of all those uncertainties. Oh, this is the last one. That's okay. This is pretty close. So this will be going through a DRB hearing. So in the coming months, that will be getting submitted as we finalize permitting kind of concurrently. We've received a lot of initial approvals to make sure everything is okay with wetlands in the area and Act 250, because there has been an Act 250 permit on the property already. And so there have been a lot of ongoing conversations with the state, and things have gone well, and they're okay with the way that we plan to treat stormwater, and that everything is being taken into account properly. So contract plans, pretty much the same late fall, early winter of this year is the plan, so we could put it out to bid. And then construction being next spring and summer, and just one construction season ideally. And so I will open it up. Thank you very much.
Okay, and it will be done by June 21st of 2024. It'll be done.
June 21st. Do you need it by then?
Well, spring ends, you know.
That's true. In the one that's not highlighted, it says spring/summer. So we have a few extra months.
That's
That would pay for all of it, wouldn't it?
There we go.
Questions?
Under construction during the eclipse, though, which is probably a benefit.
April the 8th.
Yes.
Okay, Andrew?
A couple of questions and some comments. Just in terms of the stormwater, is the reason that the stormwater basin is contemplated is because of the larger parking lot and the paved path, or is there a thought that that meadow needs to have a stormwater basin regardless?
So the site does need some stormwater improvements. That was called out as natural resource improvements in the master plan. And so this was it's all being sized, and the treatment needed is related to the new surfaces that would go in. Do you have anything else, John?
I do, except one comment.
Okay.
Tom DePietro, Director of Public Works. I just wanted to note, in the master planning phase, we were looking at the flow restoration plan for Bartlett Brook, and we did have a rather large stormwater detention system down by the road. Downstream of that, there's a pipe that carries water through the neighborhood that we've had wash out 3 times since I've been here. So we were trying to put that treatment system in to kind of control the water as it comes downhill. So the proposed one now is smaller in scale, and it's just dealing with park elements. It's not dealing with anything off-site.
Okay, so it is so the proposed one is just because of the new pavement. Is that accurate?
So it would deal with the impervious surface. It's from that existing gravel lot, gravel parking, gravel stone paths, all considered impervious surface. So we're managing that in the new system.
Right, but I'm sorry, if there were no shared use path and no impervious parking lot, would you need that stormwater basin?
From a permitting perspective? You would not.
Natural resource perspective, or from any.
So we're always trying to control the water that's coming down that hill.
Yeah.
I'm getting probably a little finer detail of the drainage system downstream, but from a permitting perspective, no, you would not.
Need it. Okay. So I have to say, I appreciate all the hard work, and it's a thorough presentation, and the design has moved, from my perspective, in a good direction, significantly toward a more passive use of the space and more respect for the natural state of the area. But I have real concerns with it, honestly. I think that it's overbuilding and really degrading the natural state of that meadow to put an asphalt 10-foot path through the middle of it. I don't love constructing a viewing area in the middle of the meadow. And there already is a parking lot, and there's tons of parking on Nolan Farm Road. I really, I think it is important and agree strongly that we need bike and ped connectivity. And I, cycle a lot. I use Spare a lot. Regular cyclists use Spare. The kids already use that dirt path. My kids use the dirt path all the time on their bikes. Like, it's perfectly fine. Like, that there is connectivity already, because the regular cyclists use the road, and folks that are not, that comfortable on the road, usually, use dirt path. And I don't see why it makes sense to pave that dirt path, and I just think it really, again, just degrades that area terribly, aesthetically, from a biodiversity perspective. There are a few low spots on that dirt path that, when it's like right now, it's completely dry because I walk it all the time. There are a few low spots that get a little wet when there's a heavy rain, and I could see maybe, building that up a bit so that it's drier even when it's heavy rain. But from my perspective, I'd much rather use, the 600,000 that's going to go into this plan to put trees on the riparian area to restore that wetland, put cottonwoods and other riparian trees, and really improve the natural state of that meadow and improve the biodiversity, and make it a real showcase for what we can do with the natural area, rather than begin to anthropomorphize the meadow and like make it something that's used by humans. Let's leave it to be used by the animals and the wildflowers. That's my perspective.
Can I make a comment? I would just encourage the counselors to talk to each other in this conversation, because staff is reacting specifically to past council guidance.
Yeah.
So
Everything
the
I said,
discussion
I'm
is
addressing to the
to you all, not they're following the
Sure.
direction of previous councils.
Sure.
Okay. Other comments, Tim?
I have two questions. One, obviously, I'm thinking there is an easement to get to Upsweat Plain that already exists, but there's probably not one across the former Long property, right?
Correct.
Which is now
To connect South
building?
Point and South Village.
Yeah. Okay.
That's correct.
Have there been any discussions with the new owners about this at all? It's really too preliminary to even think about it, or?
Yeah, it's very preliminary.
Okay. All right. So, but the goal is to make that connectivity all the way to North Jefferson?
Eventually, that is what's shown in our comp plan and in this bike
Yeah.
ped feasibility study. Yeah.
Which is really great connectivity, because from there you can get back across Midland all the way back to Dorset Street, on another path, get all the way back to cider mill where you can have an ice cream, right? Which is very important. So, and not to contradict Mr. Chalnick, Councilor Chalnick, about the dryness of the path across that park, but I often run from South Point, north to Nolan Farm Road, and it's wet. I mean, I have no, the path that comes from South Point straight across to the parking lot, right? That one trimmed area, it's not a road, it's just a walking path. But I think it's the primary path. It's really always, to me, in the spring or the fall, it's wet, and you have to walk into the deep grass to get around the puddles and stuff like that. So if that's the approximate location of where you can look at the parking lot today, and straight south there is a path all the way to South Point. That's the path I'm talking about. An improvement would be a stone dust path. I I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. Pavement, I'm not fond of. And viewing area, I mean, what do we do with Overlook Park? What do we do with Overlook Park once we have this new Overlook Park? If we have a new Overlook Park, do we have two Overlook Parks, or?
Well, my understanding was that there would be events at this natural
Well, in
area.
this one design consideration that we're looking at
Mhm.
right now, I mean, so, I mean, it's more parks is better than no parks, right? I mean, I understand that. But we have one Overlook Park, which is like half of it's totally obscured by the the arborvitaes that are standing in front of a house that's obscuring the view as well,
Mhm.
right? This park has absolutely no obstacles in front of it. Has one of the most sweeping views of the lake and the Adirondacks that I've ever seen from a piece of land, especially in South Burlington, which is really, really great. It's very unique, and I really love it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's all I have for now.
Yeah. Well, I received a letter from the South Burlington Land Trust. I also received a letter from Bob Britt, who's the chair of the Bike and Ped Committee. And I think that both points are valid with regard to, and I don't know if it's the same term in English, but the French call it artificialization of the soil. I don't know if that's at all what we say in English, but I think we have to be careful about what chemicals could go into that soil, and petroleum-based blacktop might not be, the ideal. But I do hear the interests of taking cars off Spear Street and getting bikers to really use this path that would be traveling, all the length of Spear Street, and not only for kids, but for, other people who simply just don't feel comfortable riding on Spear Street, which I think the width is pretty controlled. So that's a compelling argument, to really make this a thoroughfare for cyclists. And I do respect that those woods should remain natural. That part of Underwood, which I've walked through the meadow and the woods, and it is wet, the meadowland. And there are trails in the woods, which of course should remain, and I see no plans to change that. So I think that the goal, there's always going to be people there. So for us to say that we're not going to anthropomorphize it, it already is anthropomorphized. We use that land. People are there. So I see that we have to really think strategically about what lands we want to attract people to, and what lands we want to really maintain in their natural state. And in this case, since we're already using this pretty heavily, and there have been research projects there with pollinators and all kinds of things, which is wonderful, as well as the Common Roots garden plot. I mean, this is really a multi-use natural area where people are going to come. And if we could turn it into, some kind of, event destination, that's what the discussion was, for weddings to be held there, it would be a moneymaker for the city. And I think that we have to be careful. We certainly want to respect the woods, but it is anthropomorphized. We have to really, I think, acknowledge that. People use it all the time, just like you say, you go there every day. So it's not a pristine meadow.
Lightly.
Right. And so I think, I think we have to think about what chemicals could be going into the soil. I know that the fine stone is considered impervious. It's right. That's my understanding. I've been talking about this with my husband. So it's we have to find that balance. And I think that the argument to make this truly a road for, bikers and cyclists who are commuting, it's compelling. We have to,
for walkers too.
and walkers, right? The
Can I
sidewalks.
just say that
but
Spear is already that road. There's already a wide.
pretty.
There's already a wide. Folks that are going to get out of their cars to bike are on Spear.
Can I respond to that?
are.
I really trust the Bike and Ped Committee for their,
Spear is a bike lane.
know-how. I understand, but
Uh.
I really think that they know what they're talking about. I don't think they're throwing this out there to say, we don't care about this land. We're just going to plow right
I
through
don't
it.
think
I
so
think that
either. But there
really,
are competing considerations.
yeah.
Can I
Oh, yeah.
respond to that
Yeah.
last point, Andrew? Thank you, Megan. I agree with you. And I think it's important that we underscore how profound the challenge is to try and convince people to start commuting by bike, particularly in North America. Just as a frame of reference, cyclists, and I apologize, I'm going to nerd out for a little bit because this is what I've done for a majority of my professional career, as I've spent a lot of time working in the bicycle industry. Cyclist participation and the core of cycling enthusiasts, and by enthusiasts, we're talking about people who spend north of $10,000 on a bicycle, right? Who ride over 300 days a year. The number of them who they still ride their bike, they're still enthusiasts, but the number of them who are willing to go out and ride on the road nationwide, it's dropping at a precipitous rate. Double digits year over year, and that's during the pandemic as well.
Because of the dangers?
Because of the dangers of these. And so even those folks, these are people who ride 300 days a year and spend $10,000 on a toy, are reluctant to ride their bike to work. What shot do we have of getting average people and convincing them to leave their car at home and to pedal to work if we don't give them access, safe access, reliable access to paths? And to Megan's point, I think it's a miss if we don't afford them that opportunity with this here. I welcome the idea of a crushed stone path or a crushed stone surface. We're already struggling to maintain the parks that we have, and to Erica's point, these are more costly. If we use them selectively, great, but to use that as the primary, particularly when this could be a major hub for thoroughfare, I think it would be a mess, and I would strongly advocate for the design as proposed.
Well, can you remind me, I'm going back to the picture that has the project area and the purple lines, which are existing shared use. So in terms of getting bikes off Spear Street, you have to, what you're saying is you go across Hubbard and then down Nolan and across Spear Street and then go kind of down toward, go west, and then you can.
So the network, it's on the project area slide. I think it's the third one in.
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking at.
Yeah, so the connection through here would be you could go from Midland through South Village on, they have some paths, but also just low volume roads. You would go through South Point, across Hubbard, and then you would go up and over to Vale, which is again just a very low volume kind of neighborhood road. And from that cul-de-sac and out through Spear Meadows, which is ongoing as their path network progresses, that would take you all the way to Swift Street where a path exists.
Is that being built now?
Parts of it.
Is that path being?
The final connection, we're doing coordination on that, but there have been ongoing conversations with Spear Meadows to get those paths in.
Is it going to come out above the little pond, right? There's a little pond there on Swift Street.
That's the last section we're doing some coordination on, is that final connection street. So the
You'll
the
come out.
final outlet point isn't.
You'll come out east of the crosswalk, right?
Yeah, so the crosswalk might move that final
Oh.
connection,
Oh, okay.
and it's been in the CIP, but the Spear Street shared use path also connects to that Swift Street path. So that would be the next section.
Right.
But yeah, so it would go through Hubbard, and then the expectation would be go up to Vale and through Spear Meadows.
Oh, I see.
Well, I'm just wondering, to your point, if we're looking for a commuter path for bikes, do commuter bicyclists like this scenic path? I mean, are they going to go
They like
up
the
and
straight
around,
path.
and they would rather just go on
I
Spear
am an
Street,
e-bike
wouldn't they?
commuter.
Pardon me?
I am an e-bike commuter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use a combination of city streets, highways, shared or bike paths, the Lubrizee Bridge between
Yeah, but
Community
you
Park
like
and
the most
Tilly Drive.
direct, right? You're
Well,
not like
most people do because they don't want to
traipsing
spend an
around.
extra half an hour on their bike. But I do my best to avoid things like Williston Road, Industrial Avenue.
Right.
And in doing that, I have to use North Brownell, which isn't too bad, but it's a little heavy in the morning. But I use a lot of sidewalks. I go through Rossignol Park on a sidewalk. I use the flasher lights to get across Industrial. I go up the eastern side of Industrial to like Gale Drive and Sharon Drive, Gale Terrace and Sharon Drive to bypass to get to 2A. So, but 2A has a wonderful bike path that goes all the way down to the junction. So, anyway.
I wouldn't feel comfortable if I had a choice, and I would ask this of the council, if your kids were asking you if they could ride their bikes to school, how would you rather have them go?
Well, we live on Heinsberg Road, and I would not allow them. We don't. My husband doesn't even ride on Heinsberg Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, yeah, we have a bike path that's dumping into it, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. Well, I am like Tyler. I think we need to have separated bike paths, and we're far from that. I mean, we have it on Kennedy and on Dorset, a little bit on Heinsberg and on the Lubrizee Bridge and the whole Kimball Avenue kind of business park there. But we're far from where we should be to truly. And I'm swayed by Bob's description of this being really a parallel to Spear Street, but within, a buffer, which is far away from cars. And I think for car drivers, I hear them saying, those cyclists, they think they own the road. I think it's also positive for the drivers. So.
But are you set to have this paved?
I'm for the fine stone. I don't want petroleum.
Okay. What about you? What are these $10,000 bikes going to ride on?
I would worry about. I'm not a fan of paving over the recreation area, and again, for me personally, I'm not yet at the point where I won't ride my bike on Spear Street, but that's, if I'm being honest, I'm not the representative demographic, number one, and number two, I'm naively optimistic. I've logged hundreds of thousands of miles on that road. I don't like saying it, and I'm not a fan of it. I learned to mountain bike in that land and on the land that Councilor Chelnick's house is built on. But I'd go for paving.
You prefer paving?
I don't prefer it, but I think it's the best option for promoting commuting, for interconnectivity, for minimal maintenance on behalf of the city. I don't want to do it and then have it be something that people start to get frustrated by because it requires ongoing maintenance or because it's too expensive. That would be
I
my
grew
vote.
up on the Prairie Path, which is the fine stone path that goes on the old rail line into Chicago from my hometown, and it held up pretty well. It was fine stone, and we have 4 seasons, and the pavement, you have construction every year in Chicago. So you don't, I'm not convinced that the pavement would be you know, an economical choice.
Well, we're
Because
not
the
paving
frost
behind,
heaves and
you know, between Hubbard and what's the name of the road?
well, wasn't that the question, whether that should be paved or not?
Well, I think this part is paved, but are we
Oh, no.
paving
No, I'm talking about
all
that
the way
line
to
being
Churchill
stone.
Street?
It's currently proposed to be paved across the whole Hubbard parcel, north to south. And then it would, the part that's not part of this project is from the parcel line to Upswept Lane.
Upswept. Oh, that's a little, oh, and then you get on.
So it's just the short section, but across the whole parcel, north-south, on this graphic, the dotted purple through the green block of Hubbard is proposed to be paved currently.
I just want to reiterate what I said earlier about being at Airport Park and them having a 4.5 mile, stone dust path all the way to the cut on the causeway.
It's
And
great, yeah.
nobody minds it.
That's
Nobody
right.
minds it's not paved.
That's
It
right.
works fine, and it's
Yep.
pretty low maintenance, unless the lake washes it out, which we wouldn't have. That
Well, it would
particular
wash
problem.
out asphalt too,
Right.
or undermine it, and then it would crash through.
Right.
I'm guessing. Other comments? You don't want anything, is that right? Or you want to keep it the mode path that exists now?
I think that we should consider alternatives. Either moving the path to the foot of the meadow, which is pretty flat, not through the center of the meadow, or expanding the existing bike lane on Spear, perhaps putting those, I know when you're in DC on a bike lane that's next to a road, and many places will have like those
Stanchions like they have on
that,
Swift Street.
Right, so that there's a physical barrier so folks feel safer. My emotional reaction to this is it's degrading the meadow in a way that's not appropriate. So,
But you might be willing to have it go like right behind those houses' property.
at the
Where
foot,
they're growing,
I mean,
common roots.
if you bike along there, which I do a lot, the foot of that meadow is actually pretty flat. There's just a little peak that raises up right as you come to Nolan Farm Road, but I think it would be, easy to construct a bike path away from traffic at the foot of the meadow and not have something go bisect right through the ridgeline of that meadow.
Well, it's not just a bike path. I mean, it's the path for people to get from the parking lot to the viewing area. And they're going to want to be able to use that to get all the way to the southern part because they might then want to walk in the meadow areas around the whole property.
Well, they can walk already, which is what people
Well, no, but
do.
that path, like I said, it is wet at least half the time. If you raised it up
It's
and you
very
engineered
wet.
it and you put stone dust on it, then people can get to that spot without having to have wet feet.
I guess
I had a different experience on that path.
2 weeks ago, we were talking about how important it was that we have green spaces that people can use and enjoy, and that the community can share. And to the point where we were talking about buying additional land for use. Here we have a proposal that does exactly that, and it's one that the entire community can use. It's one that's easily accessible via bike that folks don't have to drive to. I guess my question is, what makes, it feels like this checks off all of those boxes. I'm not saying it to be quip. I hope I'm not coming across as being flippant. I'm just genuinely trying to understand why, if that's what we're trying to achieve, it feels like it checks off all of those boxes. What is it about this that makes it different? Because I haven't seen anything that suggests that there's an animal habitat that we need to protect here, that there's anything that's unique to this particular parcel. Why not here? Why not create this here?
This park, except for the parking lot, is not ADA compliant. right? The parking lot's the only place that somebody could move a wheelchair around freely off of Nolan Farm Road. The rest of the property you can't unless you had some specially adapted mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, right off the bat, that's kind of unfair. If you wanted to get to the middle of the meadow, you can't do it if you have a wheelchair.
Or if you have Parkinson's, or if
Okay.
So-
Michael wanted to say something. I got a couple people who want to speak. Are we done as a council? Has everyone shared their thoughts? Okay. So, I know this isn't really a public hearing, but the public's here and they're interested, and we don't have to make a decision on this tonight, right?
Just an update, but I
It's
think
just
we
an
should give
update.
them a direction,
So
right?
what I would
Yeah.
request, if you don't, it doesn't sound to me like you have a positive vote to stop entirely what we're doing. It sounds like you may have a positive vote to re-look at materials or something like that. So I guess the direction we're looking for is keep going down this path, but bring back some options to look at materials and look at other improvements that we could make, but keep going down this path. So if that's not the direction, and obviously you need to hear from the public before you make that determination, but that's what I'm hearing as direction from you right now.
Okay, well, I think that's fair enough. So, Michael, we got Roseanne and then Janet. Is there anyone else? Oh, and Barb. Okay. Maybe there's some. Okay.
Michael Mittag. I'm speaking for myself,
Are you
although
bright
I
green?
do serve.
Are you bright green?
Am I what?
Is your mic bright green?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
What?
Sorry.
Can't you hear me?
Well, you weren't as clear as
Good.
often are.
How's that?
Sorry, Michael.
That's better.
That's okay. My name is Michael Mittag. I live on Swift Street, and I'm speaking for myself, not as a member of the Planning Commission and not as a director of the South Burlington Land Trust. And I sent you an epistle earlier today, which I hope you've had a chance to read, because I don't want to spend the time to read the whole thing to you again, if that's okay with you.
No, I read it. We got it.
So I was making a case for a less invasive and a more environmental friendly approach to the work that's proposed to do on Underwood Hubbard nature area, natural area. In the 10 years that have passed since it was purchased, we've all learned a lot about the value of and importance of open space and preserved habitat. Not only for the preservation of biodiversity, but for our emotional health, well-being, and in some part, mitigation for climate change. Hubbard is one of the most valuable natural habitats in the city, and it is connected to and is supporting habitat for the Great Swamp, which is the most important habitat block in South Burlington. Our environmental protection standards do not allow private landowners to encroach upon wetlands, and this proposal includes a bridge across those wetlands. And I believe the city should live by the same rules as everybody else and not encroach upon that wetland. Hubbard contains meadows, slopes, grassland, shrubland, a wetland, forests, and supports a huge variety of wildlife. We don't need that bridge because the paths within the forested area are accessible from Nolan Farm Road to the north and via South Point to the south. So it's not necessary to cross and interfere with the wetland. Construction of a paved or impervious path and a paved impervious parking lot is really inconsistent with many of the city's objectives. I won't go into them here, but I've listed them in the note I sent you. And it also gives rise, as I think Mr. Mr. DiPietro mentioned, that it gives rise to the need for stormwater management because of runoff from impervious parking lot and impervious pathway. It's also part of our plan, city plan for 2024, and I'll read exactly what it says. It would not be city policy to convert passive natural recreation areas currently possessed into developed park. That's in the city plan 2024. And I don't think we should be contradicting the plan before it's even been published. We are fortunate that we have a lot of parks for sports and active recreation. I've listed them there: JC, Szymanski, Farrell, Baycrest, and so on. So we don't really need, we have, of course, Veterans Memorial Park, which is a big one. We also have a plan to have a few soccer fields just north, well, as part of South Village. So we have a lot of opportunities for active recreation. Wheeler and Red Rocks and Hubbard would be the only remaining natural areas for passive recreation only. And we need that. We need passive recreation just as much as we need it for sports and recreation. There are viable alternatives to having this paved path across the ridgeline of the meadow in Hubbard. I think when you met a few weeks ago, you reviewed a map of the city's paths and highways, which showed that there was a bike path planned along Spear Street on the western edges of the properties along Spear Street, including, of course, the park. That is a much better idea, or I think I heard Councillor Chalnick say it could be at the bottom end of the park, which I think that's what that plan shows. And we don't need additional parking. The gravel parking lot we've got there right now will accommodate 18 cars at least. And there's unrestricted parking on both sides of Nolan Farm Road. So adding another hardscaped parking lot is really unnecessary. And it goes against the grain that we are adding impervious surfaces to what is a natural area. In fact, we try not to do that anywhere in the city if we can avoid it. There's a 600,000 plus budget for this, and there are all kinds of good causes for which it could be used if we didn't spend it on this, but it could certainly be used to add or to fund the reconfiguration of that planned bike path to a multi-use shared path along Spear Street on the western side of these properties, all the way from Nolan Farm Road to the Shelburne town line.
Can you wrap this up, please? Because
Yes.
got your letter. And
I've got one more thing to say. Hardscape development is not appropriate or necessary on such a pristine, valuable natural asset. It is not a place for a thoroughfare. It is not a parcel, it's a park. And a park is not a place for a thoroughfare. It's a place for our healthy, passive recreation. Thank you.
Thank you. Roseanne and then Janet. and then Barb. And it looks like Donna wants to talk too. Okay, can you try to keep your remarks?
I'll be as short as Michael.
Oh,
No,
I was hoping you'd be shorter.
I'm shorter, right? I agree with everything that Michael said. I will not repeat anything he says, but I totally agree with everything he says.
Okay.
I want to respond to Tyler. You said there was nothing unique about this parcel, this land. It's a natural area. Yes, absolutely there is. I really suggest you read this. In fact, I put it in some of the thing I was going to say here at the end, but I'm going to say it now. I'm just going to mention what this vision report says about this parcel, and just very briefly, the entire parcel contains farmland area. Part of it is prime ag soil. It's a water resource. The Monroe Brook is there, and the Potash Brook is there. Both are impaired, but they need to be. But they are helping us. Wetlands are these are quotes, hydrographic functions, and they significantly. The overall hydrology of this wetland appears to be undisturbed, which is essential to the health of the natural community. Next one, the South Burlington Wildlife and Natural Community Assessment found that this is probably the most significant natural community within the southeast quadrant. So I just want to say that's all in this report. I really, really suggest you take a look at it. This is a very unique parcel. It needs to be, in my opinion, maintained in its pristine condition. I wasn't going to say this because this is very emotional to me. The best thing I did when I was on the city council was vote to purchase this land. I consider it the crowning jewel of the 3 years I spent on the city council. It is heartbreaking to listen to you talking about paving it over, putting a wall in, adding impervious surfaces. My God, we don't need more impervious surfaces, especially over a meadow. Andrew's idea about I really support bike paths. We need protected bike paths, but not over a meadow. Fix the bike paths that are in place. That for 15 years I've been coming to meetings, people talking about fixing the bike paths, protecting them. We have a bike path. Fix it. Don't ignore it and then pave over a meadow to put another bike path there. For God's sake. For 10 years, people have been walking on this land and looking at the magnificent views. They don't need a paved area to do that. They don't need a stone wall. They don't need benches. They don't need artwork. My God, what is more beautiful than the Adirondacks and Lake Champlain? How could you possibly put a piece of art that's going to block those views that will be any better than this? Economically, it is a disaster. Why are you going to spend over $500,000 to do the things we are saying we should not do anymore because of the climate crisis? The land right now is giving you money. The natural resources on that land are providing economic benefits to us now. Environmentally, we need that land. There are wildlife on that land all the time. I see them. There's bobcats, there's coyotes, there's birds, there's fox, there's deer on that land all the time. You're going to pave over their habitat. For God's sake, we got to keep the biodiversity. We got to keep our wildlife. We got to stop fixing nature. Nature will help us, but we're destroying it. We have plenty of paved and pavement areas and in active recreation areas. This is a natural area. As Andrew said, we've got plenty of those. We have very few natural areas in their pristine situation. This is one of them. Read the reports. There are 13 other studies a city paid for that talks about the magnificence of the southeast quadrant and this parcel of land, which is connected to the Great Swamp. So, lastly.
No, that was lastly.
No, one more thing. This study was put together back in 2015. Over 100 people participated in this. And when you look at everything they said, and I was going to read it, but I won't. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority, wanted to keep Underwood in its pristine state, and keep the natural resources, minimize to the very little what you could do. They didn't want any development on. Read this report. That's what it said, and I think it is a betrayal of the social contract. somewhat like City Center, and we talked about that weeks ago, where people came out, spent hours in meetings, and said, we want to keep this as a natural area. That's exactly what they say in this over and over again. Respect what we told you. In 2021, there were 15 people that spoke out about this, and I think that's where this project is coming from. I'm sorry to get so emotional, but please don't destroy this land. Please.
Thank you. Janet. We'll go Janet, Barb, Donna, and Miles. And try to keep it.
Janet Bellavance, and I'm with the South Burlington Land Trust Board of Directors, and I'm speaking on their behalf. Hubbard Natural Area purchased with the open space funds is a testament to our city's commitment to land conservation and a benefit to all of its citizens. The South Burlington Land Trust has concerns regarding the development plans for the natural area. Specifically, we oppose any paving of paths or parking in this field. In light of the city's commitment to addressing the climate crisis, we should not be adding any more impermeable surface, especially in the middle of a field. In this instance, less is best for the environment, people, and wildlife who depend on these wetlands. If you do move forward with upgrading the existing footpath, we urge you to follow the examples of neighboring towns, as you mentioned, and choose one of the many permeable path surface options for public access and shared use. Helen, I'm thinking of you saying that decisions are nuanced and integrated, and this is a very good example of that. As a private citizen, I just want to say comment on the amount of parking. It seems like 30 spaces is a lot, and if the existing space accommodates 15 and you have the road, that seems pretty sufficient. I don't know how that number gets accounted for, but just an aside. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Barb?
I didn't plan to say anything tonight, but.
Well, you know, it's a gift, our gift to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. First, I have a question. How many people responded to this survey that you showed us?
In the 2018 one, it was 95 there, and I'm not sure about the attendance at the workshops.
All right, just that was, I couldn't read the small numbers.
Yeah.
Anyway, listening to the conversations, I have heard nothing about pedestrians. I am here tonight as the voice of the walker. Some of you know that I walk probably 900 to 1,000 miles a year in our city or in the communities that our city connects to. That means that I spend $750 a year on walking shoes. So I have $10,000 in walking shoes. I haven't heard anything about pedestrians, and with all due respect, I have been to the bike ped committee and I have asked them to please do something about cyclists in our city. They are rude, they don't pay attention. It is dangerous often for me to walk on our paths. And so tonight, and I believe that we should create access for cyclists. I'm not opposed to that, but I'm here on behalf of the pedestrians who want to be able to walk safely. Cyclists don't ring their bells. Cyclists, I only wear an earbud on the side of the path that's away from the path. I don't do this because I know that's not smart. And I still don't always hear cyclists who come up behind me and they don't say anything. And if I happen to take one step in the wrong direction, I could be dangerously hurt. And I've come close to that more times than I'd like to think about. So I'm asking that you consider an alternative for bikes that protects those who walk. A 10-foot path is not the answer. And I'm not going to go into all the environmental issues. I'm just talking about protection for those who walk and for those who enjoy the paths through Hubbard Park. And I mentioned about that, and all that said, of course, I am concerned about the environment and the provision of public parks for citizens. And with all due respect to Councillor Barnes, Hubbard Park is not the answer for the entire city. It's far away from where I live. We need things throughout our city, something that is more central, something that is more accessible to those of us who live in Chamberlain. Yes, we're not very big, but it still is not a place that people other than I will walk to if they live in the neighborhood where I live. So it's the answer for a segment, but it's not accessible for all. The answer, I hope, will be in a bike path that bypasses Hubbard Park, but still allows a cyclist to get from point A to point B safely, and allows me also to feel safe as I walk on bike paths. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna, Laban.
Yes, thanks. Interesting conversation. I feel as though, for some reason, the Bike and Ped Committee isn't very well represented tonight.
Havala was on it.
And
Well, Bob did sent us all a letter.
right, but he's not here.
No, he could read the letter.
Yeah, and I think I utilize the walking path throughout the city, and so I think the Bike and Ped Committee also, try very hard to represent walking paths and natural paths, as well as the idea of having a complete transportation network for bicycles and pedestrians in South Burlington. And one thing I just want to emphasize is that, Bike and Ped has been working for 20 years to try to create a safe off-road network of shared use paths that allow all users of bicycles to access that network. And, does it need to be asphalt? I think any surface that is a hardened surface that is not going to degrade with rainstorms, it makes me question, like, why don't we use crushed stone driveways in South Burlington? Well, we know what happens to crushed stone driveways. They wash out and they end up, the stone dust ends up in the roadway, creating another hazard for bicycles and, other users of the roadway. So I think you want to be really, it's like in Europe, I think they used very, very well graded paths, but a lot of times they use pavers on top, which can be pretty dangerous when you have freezing conditions. I was just on a tour where one of our people went flat down on the road on pavement because it was very slippery. So I think you want to be careful, to make sure that not only is it a surface, any kind of shared use path is a surface that is not going to require frequent maintenance. It has to be something that's not going to wash out in a rainstorm, which is one of the good reasons that it's on the ridge. It's just like maybe a stone path could hold up there, but we know that you have to harden the surface of the path for it to hold up for a long period of time, and it shouldn't be slippery. So those are all safety concerns. But hey, I'd vote for, okay, no more asphalt in the city, no more asphalt roads, no more asphalt driveways. Yeah, let's try to eliminate asphalt everywhere, and let's try to eliminate all plastics in our buildings as well, because they all have fossil fuels in them. We know that's not practical right now, but we can work toward it. And so I just want to make sure that the Bike and Ped, the work of the Bike and Ped Committee over all these years is not forgotten, that we do need to have a complete system of bicycle and pedestrian pathways that are not on Spear Street, because Spear Street is not going to be a safe road for the kind of users who do not want to be near cars. It's just not safe there for young children and less confident users. I mean, I even avoid the part of Spear Street where I can, because I go down Nolan Farm Road usually, and then connect back to the bike path on Dorset Street. But so that's kind of my comments. Oh, and I do think that I do agree with the comments that suggested that, we probably have enough vehicular parking already without adding more vehicular spaces. Nolan Farm Road is a very excessively wide road. And I think we need to put it on a diet, use more of it for parking, and make more of that parking useful to users of Hubbard Park.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Those are my comments.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna finish up with Miles.
Hi there. This is my first time ever speaking at something like this, but the area in question holds a very special place in my heart. I don't know the names of the people in the council area, but whoever said that there's no unique species or there's nothing unique here to protect, you couldn't be more wrong. This land is sacred. It is pristine. It is beautiful. It would be completely devastating to be built on. And clearly the main concern is connectivity. So I don't even know why pavilion is being considered. Why are we considering increasing parking? Why do you need a sunset viewing area to see the sunset? These things make no sense. I can understand the connectivity. Yes, this makes sense. But the other things, no. It's completely unnecessary, and I'm frankly confused as to why they're even being questioned here today. It's a complete waste of time. As for the connectivity piece, if we have the resources to build a stone wall and improve parking and put up lighting and pave the meadow that is an ecological necessity, surely we have the resources to slightly extend Spear Street and maybe put more paint down and make it more an accessible bike path. Building up these natural areas is, we're in a moment in time where it is so crucial to leave these places alone. I mean, putting more asphalt down, putting more buildings is completely wrong direction that we need to be going in. Let's use this money and resources to plant trees, to plant fruit trees, to plant nut trees, to feed people. Why are we wasting money on building up areas with stone and asphalt? I mean, are you people crazy? I just don't understand. You talk to any young people nowadays and they would think this is a crazy idea. I'm an avid biker. I love biking. I'm all for it, but not through this pristine area. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I really hope that you
needed to. Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope that you listen to Mother Earth and all that she can give to you. I mean, yeah, just walk through that field when it's muddy with your bare feet and look at the sunset and enjoy it. It doesn't need to be paved, and you don't need stones there. I'm sorry. It's just
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You did a great job. All right, we have no other commenters. Do you have the direction you need? I think you had kind of generalized it. Good. So we will take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back to discuss the social service appropriations. Where are we? Oh.
It's been cool at night too. It's actually going to be below freezing a couple nights, so that'll keep the flies at bay too. So yeah, how many tests do we have? Well, 3.
All right, why don't we get back to work? All right. I know. We were doing so well. We were half an hour ahead.
I
well.
know.
It's all right. It was all good conversation. So I'd like to call back to order the South Burlington City Council council. We're all members, I guess, of this exclusive club. On Monday, May 15th, 2023, and we're taking up item 15, which is discussing the FY23 social service appropriations. And we have Martha Machar, Finance Director is your title. Did I pronounce that right? Is it Machar?
Machar.
Or Machar, sorry.
Hi, Martha Machar, Finance Director, Social Services Funding. What is presented to you today is what the city has funded for the last few years with the recommendation that we are just recommending what you have actually allocated in the past, and if you have any suggestion or any changes that needs to be made to it. And included in there too, there's a note of the council previously during the last 2 years, funding Trinity Education Center. That is the request from Dr. Charles. We are expecting a request this year that would be coming, and it's not included in here. In the past, the city has funded that with the fund balance, and last year was funded through surplus funds.
This list seems good to me.
So the recommendation is to continue with these same.
Well, level funding would be continuing on, so that's what we're maintaining the status quo. It's your prerogative how we spend this 15,000, so it's up to you.
Well, I mean, I like this. I mean, there's a gazillion great places. I have to say, I'm not positive I want to go as high with the TEC program. I haven't seen any data. I keep being told there's going to be some significant fundraising, and it hasn't happened, I don't think. I don't know.
Yeah, the funding for that is not including in this right now. That will be coming during the next few weeks to you.
And Martha has requested that data report.
Okay, I'd like to see it. I mean, I'd like to see, how many kids use it and what the fundraising, and have a little more feedback, because I think we were very generous, especially in relationship to everything else we fund.
Mm-hmm.
But I also recognize that, it's important to have a teen center. But this may not be the way we get there. So that's just my.
Forgive my ignorance. Can someone?
Trinity Educational Center.
Yeah.
It's at the mall.
Oh, is it the Infinite?
It's a youth
Center?
Yes.
The Infinite Youth Center. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
used
no,
to
no,
saying
it's
it
all right.
as Trinity Education Center. Okay.
Right. So that's just my 2 cents. But when we get to the end of the year with surplus funds, we can argue about it then.
Yeah. I will say that last summer, because I did donate food, she was taking up the federal USDA program for feeding families during COVID. So she's been active. I don't know. Since then, I haven't been in other than looking through the through the gate. But
Right.
she was very, very much active last summer.
Well, I just think it's
yeah.
important to have
Oh
that
yeah. Oh, definitely.
confirmed in some kind of report.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, any report that we will receive from her with the request will be sent to the council at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, and Helen, I think that that's especially appropriate given the spend. It's a big jump, but yeah.
Okay,
Well, so the 15,000 is the budget, right?
that's what we've budgeted. I guess the question is, do you like all these numbers for FY23, which starts in 3 weeks?
I
or 2
do.
weeks?
Do we have enough money to increase the total?
So in the budget, the amount budgeted is 15,000. If the council, when we close the year, would like to make a suggestion that from the surplus fund to fund all these other organizations, that would be the council decision at that point. But right now, we are just allocating the 15,000 that's in the budget.
Right. So, I mean, given that there's a lot of inflation and that these organizations probably are having their own budget shortfalls or difficulties, right?
Sure.
And probably increasing pay to their people. I'm just curious whether we would like to throw another 5,000 on to make it 20. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not.
Well, I mean, we used to give, it was 35.
Yeah, at one point, I think it was
when I-
60,000 that was given to multiple organizations. But I also have to add that we have not made any commitment to any of the organizations that this 15,000 is being allocated to.
Okay. Well, I very much like the list we have.
Yeah.
And I would agree that we should consider using some surplus to increase that, given everything that's happened.
Well,
5, 6, like for example, if we just added 1,000 to each one, that would be $8,000.
yeah, we also have a lot of asks from our committees. I just don't want to do that tonight without thinking, because we saw the surplus last time, and I can't remember exactly, but I remember turning to you and saying, we could use the surplus for that, Tim. So
Yeah.
I think that I'd want to have a more rounded conversation. And I just want to show what's popping up on my screen. That looks like a very natural trail.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I think of parking down at Red Rocks. That is not paved.
right.
You pull off the road and you
Yeah.
scoot in toward the bushes.
Yeah.
So
You're not polluting the soil there.
we're going backwards. But we did actually discuss that quite a bit. So,
Yes.
all right. So I guess, Martha, what we're saying is we do want to come back to this when we have the surplus number that might be available for a whole host of things. And this might be one area.
So is it the recommendation that we are not going to be cutting checks? We'll just wait until we know how much you would want to allocate, or do you want us to pay out this current location and you can increase later on?
15 and then increases where I am if that's what we decide later. Yeah, 15.
Well, do we usually cut the checks before the fiscal year?
Yeah, so if
Or
you
the end of the
approve,
fiscal year? So before June.
we do cut this check before
30th.
June. So if you approve them tonight, this will be included in the warrant for June 1st.
These are FY23
Oh, that's
budgeted
right, yes.
funds.
Well, I was actually thinking of using the surplus for next year,
That's fine.
to look at, because we approved these for
Yeah.
FY24.
Yeah.
Did we not?
There's a 15,000 in the budget,
For-
FY24 budget.
So time out. So you, in the FY23 budget and in the FY24 budget, you have 15,000 budgeted.
Right.
This recommendation is just for the FY23
Oh, okay.
current spending. So I think what Martha's suggesting is if you're okay with this list now,
Yeah.
let's put the checks in next week's warrant to get the money out to
Yep.
the nonprofits. And then if you want to add to it with a surplus conversation, you can always do that.
There you go.
And cut a second
Okay,
check.
that sounds good. Does everyone, Copa, do we need a vote?
No, because you'll approve it in the warrants.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you. And
you.
now we move
Martha.
on. Thank you, Martha. Sorry you had to wait this long. Anyway. FY23 policy priorities and strategies. Report number 3.
So we wanted to give you this report on the FY23 status update on where we are achieving all of the policy priorities and strategies in advance of you doing your homework for the retreat. Thank you, Councillor Chalnick, for already submitting his homework.
God, as he raised the
Gold
bar.
star.
Holy, you're such a, apple polisher. Whoa.
So we wanted to give you a sense of where we were with our current priorities. I'm happy to answer any questions about any of these, but I certainly don't need to walk through the 17 pages tonight. And obviously, a lot of these will be focus of discussion for our retreat on the 26th.
Yep. I don't need any more. I mean, it's pretty well laid out. And you bring us up to date with what you've done and what you haven't. So.
And if any of the new counselors who haven't gone through this before want to talk about any of these individual things, happy to talk about those offline as well.
Okay, good. Moving on. Now we're ahead of schedule. No, we're right on schedule. Convene as the South Burlington Liquor Control Commission to consider, I guess there's 3, aviation, deli, and fine foods for a tobacco license, Higher Ground, Third Class Club, and Hudson Can, wherever that is.
The airport? Is it the
Hudson Can?
Yep.
Oh, that's right. I should know that, but I didn't recognize the can part. It's a commissary, it's like a little newsstand, for a tobacco license. So, entertain a motion to become the liquor control.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we have these 3 items to consider.
I move that we approve all 3.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we have one other
Come
item.
out of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's vote to come out of liquor control.
I move that we come out of being liquor control.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're back to being who we really are. And now we'll go into other business, and we have one item. You wanted to discuss, we're going to do that in
No,
executive
executive
session.
Right.
Excuse me. So we do not have,
I have one item, but brief. It'll be brief.
all right.
Just as we can talk about it at a future time. The issue keeps coming up about South Village and the money that's set aside for the rec field. And what should it be? What does Parks and Recs want? What does South Village want? What does the community need? And what is feasible to put there, and how much money is there? So there needs to be a discussion at some point that probably involves us to push it in a right direction,
Well, all I can recall is I thought that had been established. When they got the permits to do South Village, included in that was a soccer field.
So yes, staff has been having a conversation about this. The challenge with the soccer field is it's a U8 field. A full-size soccer field cannot fit there. So that there are conversations happening between staff and the developer about, is that appropriate? Is there a higher and better use? Is there complementary use to what they already have on site? So we're going through that. The rec permit or rec impact fees that have been paid for that project are solely paid for by that developer. So as long as they're on board with a change, we can make a change. So when we have some ideas of what that could be, we will bring that back to the
So
council.
pickleball could be a change.
It could be pickleball.
You could put a ton of pickleball courts there.
That's
What?
true.
What's the other thing?
It's an impervious surface.
I know.
There are a lot.
You can make it grass. I played on
that area.
the grass.
So we are working on it, and
Okay.
yes, we will bring something
Thank
forward.
you. I will bring that back to the concerned citizen and talk to you.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to go into executives.
Oh, I have that motion.
You have that, and we added one item.
Where is it?
It's both pending litigation though.
So I would move that the council make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge of a discussion of pending civil litigation to which the city is a party would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. So I now move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending civil litigation to which the city is a
And
party.
who's invited?
Inviting in Jesse Baker, Colin McNeil, and Paul Connor.
Second.
And
Not,
no, he wants to go home. Lucky you.
Is Paul
Okay.
here? Not Paul, just
not
and-
Paul, just Colin McNeil and City Manager
Okay.
Jesse Baker.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
not be coming
And
back
we
in
will
here.
not be coming back.
That's the sweetest words I've heard.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Travis.